canticum novum, cantate Domino canticum novum, cantate, cantate, cantate Domino. Sing a song to the Lord. Sing a song to the Lord. Sing a song, sing a song to God.
Exultate, jubilate Deo.
Exultate, jubilate Deo. Exultate, exultate, jubilate, jubilate. Cantate, cantate, laudate, laudate, laudate Dominum. Sing a song to the Lord. Cantate, canticum novum. Sing a song to the Lord. Cantate, canticum novum. Cantate, 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 laudate Dominum. Cantate Dominum. Sing a song to God, sing a song to God, sing.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to the Morton High School Chamber Choir, Directors Kay Owens and Betsy Clark. The choir has been selected to perform at this year's National Convention for the American Choral Directors Association in March of 2013. The choir previously performed for this convention in 2005 after performing at the Texas Music Educators Association Convention. In 2006, the choir received honors by performing the National Youth Choral Festival in Carnegie Hall. We love our fine arts program. Another round of applause for the Morton Choir. And we'll get back on track now. At this time, I'll call into open session this meeting of the Arlington Independent School District Board of Trustees for October 4th, beginning at 7:15 p.m. Thank everybody for coming out. We'll start our meeting with the opening ceremony. If you'll please join Mr. Jimmy Walker in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please join me in a moment of silence, and while you're doing that, silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Thank you. First item on our agenda is programs and presentations. Again, we thank the Morton High School Chamber Choir. And it brings up construction update. What do you want to do? We'll do the appointment first. Somebody's in a hurry? Okay, we'll do the appointment first. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. I would like to recommend the individual discussed in closed session for Assistant Principal of Roark Elementary.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hibbs. Dr. Reich, second by Mrs. Pena. If there's no discussion, please vote. All in the affirmative. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. It's my pleasure to present to you the new Assistant Principal of Roark Elementary School, Kayleen Chris. Kayleen obtained her Bachelor of Science from the University of Texas at Austin, her Master of Education from University of Texas at Arlington. She's been an elementary academic support teacher at Berry Elementary. She's been a 6th grade teacher at Williams, a 1st and 6th grade teacher at Berry, and a 3rd grade teacher at Roark Elementary. So, Kayleen, congratulations, and is there anything you'd like to say, anyone you'd like to introduce?
Yes. President Barron, the members of the school board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Cavazos, I want to thank you for putting your trust in me to serve as Assistant Principal at Roark Elementary. I feel blessed to have the opportunity to work with the principal, Marcia Tucker, who I already respect and admire. I promise you that I will do my very best to nurture and support each of the students, faculty members, and parents in the Roark learning community to promote the excellence, the personal excellence in all of us, including myself. I would like to thank all of my mentors and all of my administrators for guiding and molding me into the person and the leader that I am today. I want to thank God for giving me strength to tackle whatever comes my way. I want to thank each past and present member of my Berry family for showing me love and support and encouragement to strive to reach my personal best. I would like to thank my Roark family for giving me the opportunity to come home. Roark is where I started my educational career as a 3rd grade teacher. I have fond memories that warm my heart and give me a smile. I hope to make new memories by working together and to promote the best in each student. I would like to introduce my son, Mason Kress. He is a junior at Seguin High School. Thank you, Mr. Hill, Dr. Evans and all his teachers for giving him an excellent education. I want to thank my dad, Norm Hood. He actually says he works harder now that he's retired, helping me with all my projects. And this is Dave Crane, and he's here for moral support. And my mom, who couldn't be here tonight, her name is Roxanne. Anyway, I want to thank my family for all the countless everyday sacrifices that you have made to support me to reach my goals. And again, thank you for the opportunity to let me serve Arlington Independent School District as the assistant principal at Roark Elementary. I'm not going to let you down.
As is our custom, the board is going to go out and say hello, so go on out there. Follow Ms. Evans. We don't want to get there before you do. And if everybody else would let us get a head start, then we will come right around and come back in and continue with our meeting. Thank you. We are back, folks. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is something that we skipped over to do the appointment, and that is the construction update. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, we'd like to give you and the public an update on our Sherry Street Elementary School and the progress. So I invite Bob Carlisle to the podium, and he will be giving us a very exciting presentation. Right, Bob?
Yes, it is exciting.
All right.
Good evening, President Barron, board members, Dr. Cavazos. What I'd like to do is to take you through a little quick slide presentation on this and kind of go back. The photos you're going to see in here are about a week and a half old. Does this help? The photos you're going to see are about a week and a half old, and they're way out of date. The project's moving so quickly. So as we start, I'll refer back to this floor plan when I come back to kind of where we are now. But if you recall, you approved the guaranteed maximum price on this project back in April. And the guaranteed maximum price was $16.6 million, which came out to about $149 a square foot. We'll just walk through some of these photos, and I'll explain some things maybe I'll use this to help make sense of what I'm going to say in a minute. But as you can see here, the top photo, the structural steel is being placed at the facility. The bottom photo is masonry work that's going on around behind the kitchen. More structural steel. That's the main entryway. That's the main stairwell going up into the second floor in the entrance to the library. The picture on the left. The picture on the right is looking back at the administrative area from the classroom wing. Here's a look of the front of the building, the actual real front of the building. The second story, that top right-hand part is the library. The bottom right-hand part is the administrative area. Masonry construction on the top photo, the CMU up there is the gymnasium and cafeteria. And again, the bottom photo is another look at the library area and the administrative area. This kind of gives you a real brief look at the total project, when we started and when we're going to finish. Our substantial completion date is May the 15th. We have no hesitation that we're going to meet that date. And then this field report, I'm going to cut back to the floor plan and kind of go over with you a few things on the floor plan. Let's see, do I have a pointer up here? Don't know that I do. Use a mouse? Okay, I got it. There you go. This wing, this is the first floor here, and let me get that out of the way. Well, how do I do it? There you go. Well,
Okay, and just don't click. Just you can move it,
Okay.
just don't click.
okay.
Yeah, there you go.
But the first floor, this classroom wing right here is a single floor, and it is completely, the structural steel is up, the exterior walls are up, the masonry work, the brick veneer is in process of happening, all the interior framing is done, electrical rough-in, plumbing stack-out, and HVAC ductwork is all in process. This area right here in the administrative area, all of this work is framed, and the masonry work is going on this back wall right here. They're in the process of standing the structural steel in this classroom wing right now, and they're putting the metal deck on both the second floor and the roof. These two areas still remain to be framed. The masonry area here, cafeteria and gymnasium, the structural steel is going up on that too. And we anticipate that the roofer is scheduled to report to start to work on the 15th of this month. And we expect, Buford Thompson expects that work to be complete and have this whole building dried in by the end of the calendar year, which is real good. And that way the finishes can truly begin inside the building. So that's kind of where we are. We're well on target. We've had no problems with it. Buford Thompson has done a magnificent job so far. Sloan Harris with VLK Architect is with us tonight. They have anytime you have a project that goes as well as it's going, you know that you have several good things happening. One of them is you have good construction documents, and VLK has provided us good construction documents. Have a good construction manager, and they have good superintendent on the job, and they have good project management also. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to entertain and try to answer them for you.
Dr. Rice, you're first.
Thank you, President Barron. Thank you very much, Mr. Carlisle, for the update. I guess I would have a question for our VLK representative.
Okay.
Specifically, I'm interested in what we've incorporated into this facility for working with ecologically sound things, green things that tie into instruction, where the teachers are able to tap into those building resources for instructional purposes.
There's a slide here that shows one of the key elements that incorporates what you're asking, and this is one of the courtyards. There, if you remember the floor plan, there's 3 courtyards. So each courtyard is set up to and intended to serve as an outdoor learning area. And the first courtyard is going to have a Texas map, and we've identified with curriculum what elements on that Texas map they want incorporated into it, and it'll be part of the overall paving system with that courtyard. The second courtyard will be the same, but it'll be the U.S. map, and the third courtyard will be a world map. So that's one of the main things that we've incorporated in the design of the building that can also be used as a teaching tool. If you recall, when we were in design, we had set up the design of this building to follow a guideline called CHIPS, which stands for Collaborative for High Performance Schools. That guideline has different ways that you can get a certification, if you will, which is basically getting a plaque on your wall. But it doesn't, there's a cost associated with that, and we had gone through with staff and elected not to pursue the cost for the plaque, but we did design it to meet the guidelines of CHIPS. And mainly that's set up around energy performance. We also worked with staff to make sure that we're conforming to an Energy Star guideline, meaning the HVAC equipment that's being utilized in the building meets a certain Energy Star rating. Any opportunity we had to incorporate materials that were either low maintenance or somehow incorporate a recycled content, we utilized those. And we also paid significant attention to the life cycle factor of the materials and the systems we employ into the building, because we want the building to last for a very long time at a high performance rate, so that you don't have to invest any more dollars in any time in the near future.
Is there going to be any identifying signage or labeling within the building to show the students that these are, for example, recycled materials, like a peek at the interior of a wall type of thing to know what it's made of versus typical construction, just so they can use that as a learning tool?
We have some allowances built into the construction contract for identification devices. That's typically reserved for regular room signage, but there is an opportunity to meet what you're requesting. We do not have that in the design currently, but that is something that we can achieve, and we can work with staff. That's a directive that we receive. Okay.
And just closing comment, very pleased to see the progress. We like to see things on time, on budget, and it seems like we're ahead of the curve, and we like to hear that up here. So
we certainly are. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Hawk.
Thank you, President Barron. Mr. Carlisle, I think this question's for you. I know my wife will be glad when this school's done, so I can stop driving by it and looking at it, because she's a little annoyed every time I'm like, let's drive by there. She's like, I don't really want to see the school again. So
I've seen
so I'm glad to hear it's on time, and she is too, even more. But let me ask Mr. Carlisle, I know we just got an email on my little, I think a thing I ask a lot of questions about what it looks like from the outside, and fencing is a big item for me, because I drive by many of our schools, and we have pretty worn down chain link fences, and I think it projects a pretty poor image on some of our schools. I know we've got an email that we've upgraded this to a black vinyl, which I know is a highly recommended. It blends in with that more. But then I look at the apartments to the north that have a steel fence, and we're not matching that. But then we're going to have a steel ornamental fence on the inside. Explain more what the difference is, why we didn't go with a steel fence, what's the maintenance costs, a little bit of that breakdown.
Well, I think the main reason we didn't go with the steel fence is I think we had about a $220,000 potential cost increase to do with the ornamental fence. My experience with ornamental fence, they're probably more prone to maintenance needs than chain link is. They require a little bit more maintenance. And so for that very reason, that's why we used chose to go with the vinyl coated fencing, chain link.
And so the black vinyl is on the outside, because that on that map, that Sherry Street is a major thoroughfare. There's a lot of traffic going up and down that street. You'll see to the east side there, the Sherry Street, go up north.
If you'll follow this line right
Okay.
here, Mr. Hogg, that's the chain link fence line. And it comes in and it loops back around this parking lot. We wanted to try to keep as much play area inside of the fence as we could.
Right.
So we loop that around. It comes and ties back into the edge of the building here. So the actual front of the building from, losing the table here, from here back to the north, there's no fence
No
at all.
fencing, because that's all parking lot
Right.
entrance of that, which is the main thoroughfare there on Sherry Street.
Right.
Now, when you said ornamental fencing, where is that going on the inside?
It's back in to isolate these wings, the
Okay.
courtyard.
Just to block off the
Those learning
courtyard.
areas they talked about, that Sloan talked about just a minute ago.
And
Those three locations.
220,000 is a substantial cost.
It is a
So
substantial
I think
cost.
that's a substantial, and also hearing the maintenance. I'm glad we're going with black vinyl. I would advise us to do that as much as we can throughout the entire district, because now I know vinyl stands up as long as a regular chain link.
Right.
Correct?
I think we'll have better success. It'll look better longer than regular chain link.
And I swear I don't just mean to make fencing such a priority for me, and
Right.
I don't know why, but I do think it's the first image
Sure it
of a
is.
school. I think
Sure,
it's a
I agree
very,
with that 100%.
it's a very key definer for how a school looks from the outside.
Right.
So it's my little outside looking tangent. So
Well, in the base bid of when we are guaranteed maximum price, we had regular chain link fence in that base bid. We asked for an alternate to do a vinyl coated fence, and that alternate ad was $12,000. And that was, I think we talked about that when we approved that guaranteed maximum price back in April. So we felt like that was a great value to get that vinyl coated fence.
I can tolerate that for the price. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Mr. Carlisle, I just have one really question.
Yes, sir.
Will this building be the most energy efficient building in the district?
Yes, sir, it should. Let me tell you briefly what you find out about energy efficient buildings. A lot of our old buildings, which weren't real tight, maybe, probably operate as cheaply as any building in the district. But because of that, a lot of the indoor air quality issues that are required now that weren't required when those buildings were built. But this, as far as our modern buildings, our more modern buildings, yes, sir, this is going to be very efficient.
Great.
And I think one of the keys to that is we've got individual package rooftop units per classroom. So we're not going to be charging up a 200-ton chiller to cool down 4 classrooms.
And is all that controlled centrally now?
Yes.
Great. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to our public hearings for the school improvement plans. And I'm going to open the public hearing on the Shackelford Junior High Improvement Plan. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. This time, we're going to have public hearings for the improvement plans for the schools that were rated academically unacceptable last year. And I think the board, as you've gotten data before, will be pleased with some of the reports that are coming back from our schools. And it's an opportunity for them to present that, but also it's a compliance item. This time I'd introduce Mr. Stephen Harvey to start the presentations.
Dr. Cavazos, President Barron, and members of the board. Tonight we'll go through 5 public hearings, and we'll be starting with Shackelford. During each of these public hearings, we'll go through the achievement standards, sanctions if we don't have improvement. Each campus will talk about their identified area of improvement and their plan for improvement, and then we'll have the public comment and questions. My portion is the standard sanctions. You'll see me up here 5 times, and you'll get to hear the same thing from me 5 times because it is required that we do it in each of the public hearings. First of all, these are the standards for achievement that were in 2011. Remember, these campuses were unacceptable in that year. Last year, there was no accountability, and so they continue to be considered in that same category. But back in 2011, the achievement levels, reading, writing, social studies were at 70%, math 65%, science 60%, the completion rate 75%, and dropout rate less than 1.6 to be academically unacceptable. If you were a academically unacceptable campus, there were some sanctions. The first was you had to create an improvement team. That team had to conduct a needs assessment. They had to analyze their data. They created a school improvement plan. Tonight, there's the public hearing on that plan, and then we will submit that plan to TEA. If we don't see the improvement required, we'll move into other years of sanctions. And it's important to understand these campuses, even though this is the second year, are still considered year 1. Okay, this is the second year 1 because there was no accountability. If they were to move into the real year 2, they would continue to create their team, and they would have to develop a reconstitution plan. In year 3, they would have to implement that reconstitution plan and have a hearing with the commissioner. In year 4, there could be additional sanctions that TEA would leverage. And then ultimately, in year 5 is campus closure or alternative management. Dr. Wally Carter will now come and talk about the data for Shackelford.
Good evening. Shackelford, of course, you recall that the They have accountability groups in every single area for their accountability. And so it was one of those things where there's multiple indicators. Any one of those indicators could put a school into jeopardy and be unacceptable. This is just a picture of the data that came from the state. This is the official report from the state that actually designates the ratings of the campuses. And this is the one that Shackelford received and indicated that they were unacceptable in 2011. What is also with Shackelford, they had the dropout rate, which was not an area for that caused anything dealing with unacceptable rating. What is particularly good is that when we were able to give a year-to-year comparison, because the tax equivalence of STAR using tax standards, you can use the year-to-year comparison. And you see that with Shackelford, they really went up considerably in the science area. That, in fact, one of the most remarkable improvements that I've ever seen from one year to the next. So that's congratulations to that particular team at Shackelford. In fact, you might recall with the AGI. With the AGI, they were #1 in STAR, as well as several of the curriculum assessments. With the math area, they actually they improved by 2 points, and that was enough to give them the acceptable rating in the math area. I think Mr. Hagman is going to go ahead and give you the information on the process that they have for the improvement and for the future as well.
President Barron, Dr. Cavazos, members of the board. Our school improvement plan for this year, we're going to continue a lot of the strategies that we implemented last year. The first one being core teachers having common planning periods, meeting at least weekly in a PLC being professional learning community, capacity to analyze assessments, share best instructional practices, and plan instruction. We made it so that all of our math teachers are able to meet at the same time, science teachers, ELA teachers, et cetera, to be able to keep up with what needs to be done, to be able to look at what needs to be taught at the appropriate time and make sure that the students are learning it. And one of the main methods of gauging whether our students are learning is the second bullet point, the weekly or bi-weekly use of common assessments to gauge student acquisition of curriculum and driving instruction. In other words, our teachers know what they need to teach based upon the TEKS that they're responsible for. They teach, and then at the end of the week they assess. That's what math, science, and ELA does. Social studies goes bi-weekly. And so then they're able to take those assessment results and weave them into instruction for the following week. Depending upon what needs to be taught that week, you can go back and remediate with, depending upon how heavily you need to, maybe just warm-ups, maybe a quick reteach, maybe you need to slow down instruction and go back and hit a little bit harder. But that's what the common assessments do, is you're able to spiral your instruction ongoing. All students this year are going to have an advisory period where they have the opportunity to work on assignments where teachers can help them monitor their own grades weekly using student self-serve, and where we can administer intervention in a core class if necessary. What we have found and research backs up is that we can't use our intervention strategies at the beginning or at the end of the day. We had to incorporate them at the beginning or in the middle of the day when we have students at our disposal and they can't get away. And so that's what we're doing. Counselors are going to be monitoring grades in math and reading every 3 weeks, other subjects as well, but those are the main ones, and intervening with struggling students. They are basically functioning as our RTI. Interventions will include changing advisory classes to facilitate assistance from an appropriate instructor. In other words, if you're struggling in science, we can put you with a science teacher for advisory, and you can get instruction that way in the advisory periods. Goal setting with counselors, parent, teacher, student, counselor meetings, focused academic interventions with our instructional coach. Those are all opportunities for intervention that we have. From our counselor's perspective, they will initiate those. All students in 7th and 8th grade academic math classes are taking a second math class. where the emphasis is on completing assignments, remediation and enrichment. The idea being we're having a period where instruction occurs, where students have the opportunity for guided practice. The second math class is for independent practice, the opportunity to collaborate, the opportunity to get help with from a teacher, but you have a time within the school day to work on the work. Math and science, 8th grade will also have a class that works with math and science concurrently for students struggling in science, so it's kind of a split. Math and science teachers will regularly integrate student use of instructional technology into lessons, just differentiating the instruction, giving another opportunity to present the material in a new way. Administrators will conduct at least 4 walkthroughs of math and science teachers weekly, and I've actually included English language arts into that mix as well. And that's the extent of our school improvement plan.
Do any trustees have questions, because we have no cards? Mr. Papa.
Thank you, President Barron. Mr. Hagman, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate you putting some good thought into this, and obviously a lot of thought into your strategy and to how we're going to get improvement there. Just a very quick question, because I think this came up last year. The what is it called? The advisory period. Is it the same length as a regular period, or is it a little bit shorter? What's the length of that advisory period?
It's shorter. Our regular classes are 50 minutes. The advisory period is about 22, 23 minutes. And so we basically had to create it in carve-out time. And so we did that by shortening our class periods a minute or two, a few minutes, and then cutting our passing periods by a minute as well. And so the pace of the day is rapid, but it's good. I love it. And so we've created that time where it's not a whole long time, but you can go and get quick instruction. You've got time to get some work done, but it doesn't bog down.
And do you get any pushback after the first couple of weeks in terms of that shortened pass period? Are the students still able to get to where they're supposed to be on time and all that good stuff?
There was consternation at first, you bet, particularly from the 7th graders who don't know where they're going in the first place for the first couple days, but people have their patterns down. And we were patient, to say, hey, it's going to take some time to learn, but figure out your path through the school. When is a good time to go to your locker? You don't have to go every passing period. And so we're good. Okay.
And do you feel that 22 minutes is impactful for what you're trying to accomplish, and when the students need a little bit of tutoring?
It's early, and the reason I say that is because we're in our 6th instructional week, and we've been doing common assessments on campus, but we've begun curriculum assessments this week, and so the heavy intervention is yet to come because we're still in fact-finding mode for kids to find out where they're at. So as far as moving kids from advisory to advisory within a given day, that's coming soon. But within the ability to get work done, the kids appreciate it. It's an opportunity for them to get some things done.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. Mr. Hagman, I want to thank you for the presentation. I want to thank you and your team. As Dr. Carter highlighted, the science improvements, that's amazing. As high as a 36-point jump. That's incredible, and yeah, you can smile. You deserve an applaud for that. That's huge. That is huge. And full disclosure, I am saying that completely objectively, although my son is an 8th grader under you. But I am saying that objectively. It's really great. I can attest how targeted and focused you've been. Just one quick question related to the advisory period. For the children that don't necessarily need that level of remediation, is that essentially an opportunity for them to work ahead on homework as an example, or are there other opportunities for them for higher level of achievement, or if you could just describe that real quick?
Sure. When we set up our advisories, we placed students based upon the prior year's STAR results, and so the students that we knew that we anticipated were going to need more intervention, They're in specific classes, and the students that performed higher or at a higher level, they're in different classes. Now, there's flexibility, and we'll be able to, or fluidity, we'll be able to move kids as we need to. But for those kids that are not needing the intervention, it is a chance for them to get work done, which they're most appreciative of, because those are oftentimes the same kids that are doing a 0-hour class and athletics and band, and they're hither and yon. And so an opportunity for 20 minutes of solid work is great for them. The opportunity for enrichment, we have UIL academics on our campus. That's often done after school because the main teachers that are involved are intervening at that time, or that's when they're going to do it. But that's a possibility. That's also when some of our clubs meet, like Student Council and JHS.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Welcome. And thank you for the kind comments.
PLCs. Are all the math teachers meeting at the same time, or are they meeting by grade level or subject?
They meet by level, and so I've got, the way we've worked it this year is I have my 7th grade pre-AP and my 8th academic math. They're team together, so they meet at the same time. It is all second period, but then my algebra and my 7th grade academic math meet at the same time during second period, but they're separate. And so we have a separate meeting weekly. One of them we get together on Tuesday, and the other one is on Wednesday. And so that way it's not too much confusion. It can be focused.
Same thing in science?
Yes. 7th, they're all off first period, but 7th grade meets on Thursday, 8th grade meets on Friday.
Okay, now if we're doubling and sometimes tripling up math and science, or math or science, something had to give. What is out of the curriculum now?
It's not a tripling up, just for clarification. That class is that double block class is for students that are getting science and math. That is in place of the kids that are getting just a second class of math. So, yes, an elective class was eliminated because of the double block math.
Okay. Thank you. The public hearing on Shackelford Junior High School Improvement Plan is now closed.
Thank you.
Next, we will open our public hearing on Morton Elementary School Improvement Plan. Dr. Cavazos.
Mr. Harvey will introduce the next section here.
Okay, the first portion is really the same. We'll go through the same areas related to Morton. The standards and sections, again, are the same. The achievement levels were the same for all subjects to be academically acceptable. The sanctions, improvement team, needs assessment, and then a focused data analysis. They built their school improvement plan, tonight's public hearing, and then we'll submit that to TEA. The sanctions, again, are the same for this school as well. They are still in year 1 for the second year. But if they were to move to year 2, they would have to develop that reconstitution plan. Year 3 would be to implement the plan. Year 4 would be a hearing before the commissioner and potentially additional sanctions. And then ultimately in year 5, campus closure or alternative management. So again, Dr. Carter will present the data on Morton Elementary.
Okay, like many of the elementaries, they don't have accountability groups in every single subject because there's a certain group size requirement that must be met. But this indicates which accountability groups were part of the 2011 accountability system for Morton. Again, the state's report it indicated that in the reading, African American reading was the area that gave them the unacceptable rating. Of course, there was nothing dealing with dropout rates or completion rates, so there's not really a second page. Even though it's there, there's nothing in there for elementary schools. Again, just tremendous gain in the area that Morton had been consigned the unacceptable rating. You see that 22 percentage point gain in that reading area, which is, again, reading is one of those areas that is a little bit more difficult probably for major gains like that because it tends to be so much saturation of so much with comprehension and reading ability and capability. And so they did some remarkable work in order to have that kind of increase. And so then, as you see, it was just the one area. There were a lot of other areas where there was tremendous gain. I think Mr. Paulson will probably address one area which was not so much of a, there wasn't a gain, but he'll address that. And then with that, school improvement plan by Mr. Paulson.
Good evening, members of the board. Nice to see you all again. Like Shackelford, many of our campus school improvement plan strategies have been tweaked. Some have been dropped. Some have been taken to a new level. We've implemented a culture of continuous improvement through targeted professional development. Some of those areas would include, but not limited to, working again with the instructional specialists from AISD. They've done a great job in the curriculum department, reading, math, and science folks, visiting our campus, working with our staff. Additional book studies this year. Teachers have several books to choose from. Additional training for specific teachers based on curriculum assessment results. Teachers will work with our instructional coaches. We've hired a new coach just for 3rd through 6th grade math. Campus will take our PLC journey to a new level. Last year we were just going to introduce it. It went so well that now we're really working with collaborative teams where teachers are actually doing their lesson planning together in teams to make sure, with the coaches, to ensure that they're working with Curriculum Central, they're staying on their timelines, and then we're also using those lesson plans to create our common assessments for each 6 weeks. And it's been going pretty well. Students will consistently participate in 21st century learning opportunities. We've doubled the number of iPads since the last time we were here. We now have over 250, and we'll be getting some more through a TLI grant. Weekly walkthroughs will continue by at least 4 by each administrator. Tutoring interventions and instructional support will be based on student results from both the CAs and the common assessments, as well as RTI meetings. Data-wise will be utilized by teachers and administrators. One of the big things last year was to start a focus meeting and actually giving teachers and empowering them to help with, beginning we were giving them their data and meeting with them and asking them the questions to analyze each of the TEKs and the goals that they were weak in on each the TEK areas that they were weak. They developed strategies, they examined how they taught it and how they were going to reteach it. And we did that with the help of instructional coaches and curriculum staff. And then we presented to the curriculum staff as well as Debbie Williams and Dr. Cavazos last year, and the teachers were actually doing all the presentations from about the 2nd CA on. The 1st CA and the 1st meeting, I kind of ran and went through things, and then from then on we gave the teachers, empowered them to do it, and it was a lot of collaboration. They've taken ownership and pretty much have moved from cooperation into collaboration at its best. And then some additional strategies that we've added because of luckiness and grants. We're part of the Texas Literacy Grant, so all of our teachers will be giving not just the DRA in K 1st and 2nd, but also the TPRI. They received additional training, and they've gotten $90,000 in reading instructional materials, iPads, and software to help work with reading programs, and a lot of pre-K, from actually starts from 3-year-olds all the way through high school in the SAM network. But it's a great program, and our teachers are really embracing it. And then we're also one of the 4 campuses that will be piloting the new NEIT TAP program, which focuses on evaluation as a coaching model and working with improving, again, the whole theme of everything from data-wise, PLCs, and the strategic plan of this evaluation is all about continuous improvement. And that's it.
Questions from the board? Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. Principal Paulson, congratulations.
Thank you.
A lot of work, a lot of accomplishment. You've been there how long?
16 months,
Yeah,
15 months.
That's what I thought. Great job and progress in such a short amount of time. You're really turning it around there. Really appreciate it. And as high as a 22-point gain in reading, I think you deserve a round of applause as well. Phenomenal. There's one area that was just a flat line, not a negative, not a bad, in math. Can you tell me, as far as the tweaking, what you're looking at there to try to tackle that, as well as the rest of it? But
well, last year our reading was fundamental, and reading is the charge, so we had to attack reading first, and that's what we did. But we quickly implemented many of the math programs, but we didn't get to implement many of those till January. Plus, our population, like many of the campuses in our side, constantly changing. Since school began, we've probably lost 25 kids that we've already done DMA and DRA testing on. They've already moved on. We got new kids, so we have to go dig up new data. We've already done RTI meetings on. This is a constant change. Probably 10% of the students that will take the test in April haven't even enrolled yet at Morton.
Wow.
So that's part of that's a little disheartening because you work very hard to raise them, raise their scores, give them interventions, and they leave before they take the test.
Right.
And so they don't count on your campus scores, but, you know, that's part of it. And it's just, we've got a lot of strategies in place. Again, the collaboration with the coaches and lesson planning together to ensure everybody is covering Curriculum Central, the TEKS, and they're sharing all their best practices with each other.
That's excellent.
And
Yeah.
of course, TMI and do the math.
Yeah. The mobility issue is one that's
It's life
brought
at the middle school.
in every school and I think in every district, and
It
that
is.
is a key for achievement. So thanks for dealing with it all. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Hibbs.
I echo Dr. Reich's congratulations on what you've done there. And
Thank you.
I know that you came into a situation that wasn't the prettiest. I wasn't planning to speak or ask you a question until you just mentioned something about the population movement of the students. In your opinion, out of that 10% or so that, or that amount that's going to move from your school, are they staying within the Arlington system, or you think, or majority going?
Best guess, at least 75% of them stay within Arlington.
Okay.
Some of them do move on.
And is it beginning to hit at school level that we're encouraging those parents to keep their child at that one school, and there's no cost for them to have to do so?
I think that's a great policy. I think the problem is that many of them are evicted, or they leave their rent apartments.
So
and
there's no transportation?
They move to other sides of town where, you know,
Okay.
it's just, they look for different, we enrolled 17 kids last week from Spear.
Okay.
And a bunch of our kids also went up to Spear. So that's a long drive for them, even with transportation,
Sure.
to make
Well,
that
then,
commitment.
obviously, that's something this board's trying to get a handle on. And that was our first measure to
Right.
try to maintain these children at a permanent campus throughout the year as much as possible. So if you principals that are in the trenches, if you can help us solve that problem, in what you see, that would be appreciated. Something I made comment, and I didn't say this to Mr. Hagman when he was up here, but are there still any resources that you know that you need?
We're doing really good. Debbie Williams and I communicate constantly. If there's something I need, she gets right back to me on
Okay.
it. So thank you. I thank you.
So I don't have to repeat this to anybody else. That's what we need to make sure that
Right.
you relate to us at all the different schools. If there's resources that you need, I hope you know that this board is willing to try to get you to be successful.
We appreciate that.
So whatever that is, please let us know, and that goes directly through the superintendent, obviously. So we appreciate that.
I have no cards from the audience, and the board has no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. On behalf of the staff, I take all of those credits back to them. They deserve it.
The public hearing on Morton Elementary School Improvement Plan is now closed. Next, we'll open the public hearing on the Roquemore Elementary School Improvement Plan. Dr. Cavazos.
Mr. Harvey will start that presentation.
And I'm back. Okay, the areas will be the same that we go through. We'll look at the standards, the sanctions, areas of improvement, plans of improvement, and then have the public comments. Again, the levels of achievement were the same in all subject areas for all campuses to be academically acceptable. The sanctions, they had to create the improvement plan, improvement team, conduct the needs assessment, and then analyze that data. They created their improvement plan. They'll have the board hearing tonight, and then we'll submit that to TEA. If we don't see the necessary improvement in year 2, we would develop a reconstitution plan. In year 3, we would implement it. Year 4, we could have a hearing before the commissioner, and there could be additional sanctions that ultimately would lead to campus closure and an alternative management. So to do the data for Roquemore, Dr. Carter.
And again, from the state, and you see that Roquemore, these are the accountability groups for 2011 that they were responsible for getting their rating, and the state's report that had several indicators that caused the unacceptable rating at Roquemore. And to get right to it, how did they do? You see that these 5 areas were the areas that were the cause of the unacceptable rating, but you see that in every case they had double-digit improvements. So again, a phenomenal kind of outcome with some good hard effort by Ms. DuPont and her staff. And Ms. DuPont will now go into her school improvement plan.
President Barron, Dr. Cavazos, and the board, good evening. Oops. Training will be provided by the Department of Curriculum and Instruction to improve pedagogy in reading, writing, science, social studies, and mathematics. Training will also be provided by speakers, specialists, and instructional facilitators on engagement strategies to increase student motivation and cognitive abilities. Administrators will monitor instruction with weekly walkthroughs for implementation of rigorous instruction, learning objectives, and TEKS-based lesson. Data generated by weekly assessments and curriculum assessments will be used to check for mastery of TEKS, to guide instruction, and to determine intervention strategies. Our teachers will receive training on creating learning objectives based on higher level thinking, engagement strategies, and delivery of instruction that meets the needs of all learners. And small group instruction and tutoring will be utilized to ensure student success and will be based on academic needs collected from weekly and curriculum assessments and curriculum assessments.
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. As is becoming habit here. Okay, everybody get ready to clap here. I commend you. We've got 3 different categories. Science up to a 27-point gain, reading up to a 22-point gain, mathematics up to a 17-point gain. It's phenomenal. I was curious on the weekly walkthroughs. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you're doing on all classes, all levels, or specific to the areas that there were noted deficiencies? Everybody.
Everybody.
Okay.
Our expectations went up for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. It's everything that we've heard so far tonight demonstrates very clearly when expectations are set, people fall in line and achieve.
Yes.
And I'm looking at our children, and this is great. This is exciting because this is exactly what we're looking at with our strategic plan, is set those expectations way up here,
yes, sir,
and we will achieve. So thank you again. That's all I have.
There are no further questions. I have no cards from the audience or further comments from the board. Thank you, Yvonne. Appreciate it. The public hearing on Roquemore Elementary School Improvement Plan is now closed. Next, we will open our public hearing on the Sam Houston High School Improvement Plan. Dr. Cavazos.
Mr. Harvey will go through that presentation one more time.
Yes, like the movie Groundhog's Day, I am back. The areas of focus are the same. Achievement standards, we'll look at the sanctions, the areas of improvement, the plan for improvement, and have public comment. The levels of achievement, even though we've moved to high school, still remain the same for all subjects areas in 2011. The sanctions, the sanctions in year 1 are that a team had to be created, needs assessment was conducted, and they focused on a data analysis on that data. They had to create the school improvement plan. They're here tonight to introduce it to the board, and then we will submit that report to TEA. The sanctions, again, are the same as you move into years 2 through 5 for all levels. So they would have to develop a reconstitution plan, implement that plan in year 3, have a hearing before the commissioner with additional sanctions possible in year 4, ultimately leading to the campus closure or an alternative management. Dr. Carter will talk about the Sam Houston data.
Being a high school, Sam Houston had several of the, almost all of the accountability groups in each of the indicators. There's only one group under the completion rate 1, but completion rate was not a problem for them. Again, the official report from the state to designate the unacceptable rating to Sam Houston and their completion rate as well, but again, that was not the problem. And then you have the areas where they had the problem, which is in mathematics. But again, like to congratulate the principal from last year that they actually had double-digit improvements. And of course, with mathematics, that's three grade levels that are involved there. So it's not like just one grade that had to turn around. It's an aggregate across all 3 grade levels. So again, we have Mr. Benavides to give you the school improvement plan.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Ross. Here is our improvement plan. We're going to focus on professional development. We're going to use research to address the emotional and social challenges students face on a day-to-day basis. 2 of the publications here, Teaching with Poverty in Mind by Eric Jensen, provided by the Title I office, and then High Performance in High Poverty Schools, 90 and Beyond by Douglas Reeves. These are, again, were both provided. Oh, actually, the second article is provided by the TLI facilitators. Research-based, where high socioeconomic campuses have made some significant gains, and so we're going to use those best practices, okay? And this is also to help our teachers understand how poverty affects behavior and academic performance, because currently this year, my students qualify, 90% of my students qualify for the free and reduced lunch program. We're also going to use Kilgo training for core subject area teachers, differentiated target instruction, after-school tutorials and tutorial classes will be based on that, and then focus on our needs that we have at Sam Houston. We're also going to visit MacArthur High School this year. That's arranged by Miss Evans Smith. I want to thank her for that. MacArthur High School is an Arlington ISD in the Houston area, rated 2012 one of the best U.S. high schools rankings, U.S. Awards Report. It's a Title I school, 93% economic disadvantage in 2011, and they have about 90% Hispanic population. So we're going to see what's going on there and hopefully get some good ideas and come back with us. Let's see next. Oops, sorry. Again, we're going to focus on professional development, focus level meetings using the PLC framework. Those level meetings, we do have PLC meetings in all subject areas, and we'll focus on student performance data, best practices, what's working in the classroom. We have a dean of instruction, instructional coach. Our counselors are also going to be part of this process as well as assistant principals, because we're going to have ongoing discussions as to what our students need, providing the guidance and support they lack due to circumstances at home or whatnot. But again, everyone's going to be part of that. Again, making sure that our dean of instruction, instructional coaches, they're all part of that. And then teachers also maximize collaborative time as they review district and campus assessment data and focus on the instruction. Again, we are going to do weekly walkthroughs. We have a mobility rate that's higher than the state average. We have 3,304 students, and it does take a lot of hard work to kind of keep kids in school. I've added a ninth counselor, a second social worker to provide that guidance and support, and I did that by eliminating the ASC facilitator and grant manager positions. I've got about 22% of my students are off grade level, and so that's a challenge in itself to make sure that we get them up to speed. Also not noted here is our goals for the campus support personnel will be to provide the best learning and working experience possible for all students, faculty, and staff. We're going to try to provide a safe, predictable, stable learning environment for all students, and our goal is to graduate students in 4 years or less. And I also want my students to have a good high school experience and have fun. That's important. That's also part of your strategic plan. So I like the fact that you guys added that as well. Again, we're going to look at targeting students for interventions based on TAKS and EOC scores, course failure data, common assessments, benchmark data, teacher referrals, student attendance, and out of placement for disciplinary assignments, which is a challenge for us. I recently did a faculty survey to make sure that our faculty understands the direction we're headed in and what we're trying to accomplish. A couple of things that were used last year that we did see obviously some gains. The Texan Academy targets the at-risk ninth grade students. Students attend 45-minute classes daily. It's similar to what we do at the junior high level. Students will see their teachers each day, and that's done in all the 4 core areas. So it's a team teacher approach where they're working together with the same group of teachers. Again, guidance support sessions conducted by our social workers and guidance counselors. And all core subject area teachers, 9 and 10, have common collaborative periods, which again is that PLC time. We're not able to do that with the 11 and 12, but grade levels, core areas, but they know that the extra time is needed to spend to work together and collaborate. And they're doing that during lunchtime and then also after school as well. And then, of course, provide the campus supports needed, materials, initiatives, and the training. We're going to focus on instruction, increase the walkthrough observations. Every teacher will get a 45-minute observation this year. We're doing daily observations by the Dean of Instruction, myself, all the assistant principals, and our professional service provider, Ms. Judy Linderman, who recently was in our building, and she gave some positive, again, to let us know what's going on in the classroom in the area of math. So I was real happy to see that she did see that student engagement, and teachers were focused on good learning objectives based on TEKS. This is a work in progress, obviously. I have about 45 new teachers this year, and getting them up to speed, making sure they understand the PLC, the TEKS, student engagement, and making sure that they have good learning objectives and planning together with their colleagues. And then finally, our increased use of technology. We're going to ensure that all teachers are trained according to our district plan, exchange plan, student use of technology, and then also increase the student engagement with the use of technology. And that is it.
I have no cards from the audience. Mr. Pompa.
Thank you, President Barron. Mr. Benavides, I know that, let me just say first that congratulations to Ms. Beverly McReynolds, because the results from last year obviously go to her credit.
Yes,
so I don't think she's here today, but I hope she hears that we understand that a lot of this was her efforts.
That and I think Crystal Lyons, also math strategic specialist, and then Chauncey Reese, Dr. Reese is also another one. That
Thank you very much. So certainly have to give credit where credit is due. And I'm very excited about Ms. McReynolds' new post and the impact that she's going to have there where she is now. In regards to your plan, I mean, I had looked at it, and I can tell you that anything that I could have possibly imagined for you to do, you guys are doing. You're doing a ton. You have a good plan. You have a great plan. I think it's in line with our very high expectations. I think your possibility for success, I mean, you've given yourself every chance to succeed. I love the idea of you going out to Aldine and seeing what it looks like, what it feels like, the whole experience for your staff to be exposed to that. I think that's visionary leadership, and I applaud you for it. So thank you very much.
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. Mr. Benavides, I would echo my colleague completely. The things that you're doing are tremendous. I was curious on the survey. You mentioned that you're surveying to make sure that the staff understand. Can you give us some insight as to what the results are? Are they pretty positive?
Yes, sir. We are collecting that data, and you know, we've got some areas to improve. You know, there's areas that we need to address, and again, working with the staff, making sure that we're transparent. We're going to publish that data. We just gathered the surveys after the first 6 weeks, and it was actually after that staff development. I wanted to ensure that we included data on the staff development day that we had. And so we're accumulating that. We had about 50% returned surveys, so the assumption is if they didn't return the survey, then they have no problems. But once that is gathered, my secretary is working on that now. We're going to publish that for the faculty, and then also have the areas of concern are going to address each one.
Okay.
And again, use that transparency as our model.
That's super. That's super. Well, again, I think you're definitely on the right track. Looking forward to continued success. I guess the only other thing that I would ask is, as far as the common assessments, are they at a more frequent interval as
yes, sir.
I think the elementary folks mentioned, or
They are
junior high as well?
Yes, sir. In between the district curriculum assessments, yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Because obviously it would be more beneficial to have that on the fly so you can tweak and modify as you're going. So I'm glad that that's occurring. All right, thank you.
Mrs. Sullins?
Thank you. Mr. Benavides, thank you for your presentation this evening. But earlier in the year, I thought your numbers were up. Your enrollment numbers were way up. I haven't heard what they are recently. Are they still really high, and is that going to tax your campus improvement plan?
3,304 today.
3,000.
304 today.
Wow.
And it's changing. Again, I have the highest mobility rate, along with Lamar, actually. Roger Jones did some analysis for us. We have a busy registrar's office, and I'm glad to see that Dr. Cavazos approved a second registrar for us, because it's constant, keeping up with records, keeping up with data. Like I said, 22% of my students are off grade level, and sometimes that's because I don't have records from other schools. And so putting them in the right courses for my counselors is a challenge, because a lot of times, due to life circumstances, they'll show up ready to go to school, but with nothing in their hand, no transcripts, no nothing. It is their reality. It's my reality.
Yes. I would like to echo what my colleague said earlier this evening, that whatever resources the board needs to put to things that we need to do to address the student need on your campus. I know that you work through Dr. Cavazos, and we'll be eager to make sure that the resources are aligned with student need. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no further cards and no more lights. Thank you, Mr. Benavides. The public hearing on Sam Houston High School Improvement Plan is now closed. Next, we will open our public hearing on Lamar High School's Improvement Plan. Dr. Cavazos.
Turn that over to Mr. Harvey for the last one.
Thank you. Last one. Before we start this one, I would like to mention that a part of the requirements that the district has for all of these schools is that we must select a professional service provider, which is an outside individual who's kind of our liaison to TEA. They work with these campuses, they monitor progress, and they do the reporting to TEA. And both last year and this year, all 5 of these campuses had Ms. Judy Linderman, who's here with us tonight, who does a great job in supporting all of them. Okay, on with the last one. Again, the areas of focus will be the same. We'll talk about their achievement standards, the sanctions, the areas of improvement, the improvement plan, and then we'll have the public input. The levels of achievement are the same in reading, math, science, social studies, completion rate and dropout rate as they have been for the other schools. The sanctions were that they must create their improvement team, have a needs assessment, and then have a focused data analysis based on that needs assessment. They create their improvement plan, they come here tonight for the public hearing, and then we will submit to TEA. If we don't meet those improvement goals, then in year 2, we will develop a reconstitution plan and implement it the following year. In year 3, in year 4, we will have a hearing before the commissioner, and there could be additional sanctions that would ultimately lead to the campus closure and alternative management. And to present the Lamar High School data, Dr. Carter.
With Lamar, it's always personal. This is my home area, attendance zone. So yes, we always like to see good things at Lamar. As you see, Lamar had every area as part of their accountability for accountability groups and all indicators. And there is a particular area that it was identified from the state. And we'll get to that in just a moment with the improvements, but that's just the facsimile of the state itself. The report that designated it as unacceptable in 2011. And with the improvements, we have once again double-digit improvements in the areas that were the cause of the unacceptable rating. So thank you very much. I guess Mr. Province from last year, that my house is still stable and thriving, and everything is just going fine. So very happy to hear that. So Dr. Harmon is here to give you the school improvement plan.
All right, good evening and thank you, President Barron, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos. It's my pleasure to present a plan that was developed by our staff, particularly our site-based team. I'd like to thank them for the courage to spend time and look at longitudinal data that often wasn't pretty, not the trend that we expected and wanted. and to look at some research and come up with a research-based best plan. They also looked at the strategic plan and the 3 outcomes and designed and aligned that plan to inspire learners and build effective leadership and also to engage the community. So in that spirit, the improvement strategies focus first on inspiring our learners. And we know that when we deal with improvement, we're talking about nurturing those students that are most in need, students who ordinarily would have been socially promoted or would not have passed TAX or EOC or STAR in 8th grade. We implemented an academy in the 9th grade last year, and that academy focused on first-year freshmen and provided 45 minutes of instruction in all 4 core areas and an additional math class, since that was the primary identified need area for students. We will continue that academy, and because it was so successful, we've also migrated to a sophomore academy focusing only on math and science, since those are areas of need. Now, half of our freshmen last year graduated out of the academy, and we have a healthy mix of new 10th graders and continuing freshman academy in our 10th grade. But the academy and the intervention roughly captures about 250 students out of a population of 2,900. And so we know we have to have systems in place to provide extra support or Tier 2 intervention when classroom instruction is not enough for students. And the third bullet here, we're going to continue to improve our response to intervention system, and we'll have a 3-week data analysis cycle and recommendation for additional intervention for students, all students. And we're talking about the 4 core areas of math, science, English language arts, and social studies. We have built into our master calendar Tier 2 classes so that they handle the capacity of students that need just-in-time support in those 4 core areas. And they receive that support 45 minutes a week in addition to their core class for 3 weeks. We remonitor at the end of 3 weeks because we have a district assessment at the end of every 6 weeks, and we have a campus assessment during the 6 weeks. And that allows us to continually gauge in a 3-week cycle for improvement efforts and to evaluate whether the improvement has worked, the Tier 2's worked, and they can graduate out, or they need to continue, or some need to cycle back in. To also inspire learners, we know that really the emphasis should be the core instruction, the Tier 1 instruction. And as the district improvement plan includes a charge to develop an instructional model, we're going to tackle that here at Lamar High School. Now, it says develop. It doesn't mean that we've implemented, but we're taking at least a semester and a year to implement some practices, reflect on those, and to develop an instructional model that, based upon the work of Bob Marzano and others, involves aligning the curriculum to the standards, making sure that what is taught with a model that's research-based, that students practice what is taught and replicate what's taught by the teacher, and also that they're given feedback within the learning. To also inspire learners, we know that instruction is engaging when students use technology, and over the past 3 years, the board has been kind enough through the bond issue to support about $900,000 of technology at Lamar High School, and we intend to make sure that those are well used and in the hands of our students, particularly the iPads and the CX calculators. We also know that the people that best know the students and know them holistically are our counselors. And our counselors, as part of our improvement effort, must be first responders when students struggle academically. So when our teachers and our data shows that students are not progressing well, the counselors respond to them, and they are the ones who place them in the Tier 2 classes if academic intervention is necessary. Sometimes it's the social emotional end that needs to be attended to. So if the academic is not the primary need, the counselors are in best position to work with the parents and figure out social and emotional supports for our children. And then also inspiring our learners, we expect all of them to graduate under the recommended high school plan, which makes sure that they're eligible and ready to be college bound. And in support of that, we'll continue in year 4 or 5 with our AVID strategies, hoping that we make that national demonstration high school in February. Having this type of charge involves building the capacity of our staff to deliver these new services. And so when we've implemented our PLCs, professional learning communities, or teaming, we ensure that all freshman and sophomore teachers in the 4 core areas have a common teaming period for the purpose of ensuring that that what we teach is consistent. It's a guaranteed curriculum, and we don't run an educational lottery dependent upon who teaches the child. We've also built capacity for 40 new staff members that we've brought on board this year, and our department chairs teach a day. They teach A days, and they have their instructional coach on B days. As an instructional coach, they work with new teachers. They ensure effective implementation of your investment in the PLC time, and they also work specifically with data and have data dialogues with our teachers. We've also been a beneficiary of receiving funds and support from our literacy grant, and this year, year one, for all campuses is to develop common literacy strategies across the curriculum. Because our department chairs are instructional coaches every other day, they form a key part of our leadership team for literacy and ensure that they're all exposed to those literacy strategies. They develop them, and then they shotgun them out to their appropriate department in an appropriate way for their curriculum. We'll continue with walkthroughs to provide feedback to our teachers. And probably the last bullet might be most important. We know that what's celebrated gets done. And part of our improvement efforts at Lamar must include acknowledgement and recognizing the great examples of teaching learning at our staff. And lastly, to engage the community as partners, we plan 2 town hall meetings, at least 2, one in the fall, one in the spring. The one in the fall will be, I can tell you, October 25th. And interestingly enough, our focus has been to focus on discipline. And in light of what happened with media coverage this week at our high school, it's an opportune time for us to control the conversation and address it instead of being on the reactionary and receiving end of a lot of concern among our public. We also want, when we get information from the TEA on changes in state high school graduation rates and plans and accountability, we want to plan an early February town hall meeting focusing on high school graduation rates in light of a lot of parents who need that just-in-time information. We do have Tier 2 support, but we don't have the capacity to staff that all 8 periods a day in all content areas. So fortunately, we have been able to partner with senior students graduating from UTA's engineering school, and they're providing tutorials, small group tutorials, to our students focused on mathematics and science. And that's being funded by our Comp Ed budget. And then also, we have so many programs at the high school level. We're very program rich. Our parents are sometimes information poor, and if we expect them to partner with us, we have to inform them on what programs are available, but how to partner. Those have to be formally structured, and they'll be structured around a common model for a parent-student forum, where those who've been successful in the programs are talking to those who should enter or should consider entering the programs. And so with those are the highlights of the Lamar Campus Improvement Plan.
Thank you, Dr. Harmon. I have no cards from the audience. Mr. Pompey, you're on.
Thank you, President Barron. You know, as I look at this plan, first of all, I just love the alignment with our strategic plan, first and foremost, and it gives me great confidence as I listen to your plan and all the plans that we've seen before. One of the concerns that I keep bringing up as we look at our strategic plan and our development of the execution of that is that we did a lot of work to put it together, and now we're putting a lot of resources behind it. And my concern is, are we really going to get to where we want to go? But listening to y'all and looking at your plans, reading your plans, and especially now my second year that I understand a little bit more than I did the first year when I listened to these, you know, I'm really am filled with confidence that you guys are going to deliver. We have an amazing team of principals here, and I think that you guys are indicative of the rest of the principals that we have in this district now. And it just really gives me that confidence to believe that that we're going to get this done. We are going to be the best very, very soon. A couple of things that I heard from your plan. You know, data-driven, research-based. You know, that's exciting to me, that we're really utilizing information to make the decisions, and not only our information, but outside information to really develop those best practices that you're talking about. We talked about making sure that everyone has an advocate. So your view of the counselors really is in line with that goal that we have. Huge one is celebrating wins. Small wins lead to big wins. You gain momentum, and certainly, I think love that concept. We don't do that enough, I think, and the more we do that, I think that the better we'll be. And then the intentionality, not only to the winning, celebrating the wins, but that community engagement. We hear from the community that they want to be engaged. They want to help us. They don't know how. And a lot of times, I do feel that we actually put up blockades to keep them from engaging with us. Hey, listen, we know we can do it, but we need their help. And so your intentionality in involving that community very strategically, UTA, parents, I love that part of your plan. So again, thank you for the leadership. Thank you for the amount of effort and thought that you put into these plans, and you filled me with that sense of confidence that I really been looking for, to know that yes, we're going to get this done. Thank you very much.
Dr. Reich?
Thank you, President Barron. I'll just say ditto, echo everything that Mr. Pompa just said. Very well stated, Mr. Pompa. I would also like to state that you were there last year. Principal Jeff Province was there, so to his credit, I publicly thank him, acknowledge his efforts in these double-digit gains. It is great. One question that I have regarding adding the academy into the sophomore year. I know last year that was a new concept, and there was some heartburn by some of the families. For those that are continuing on, how are they? Do they like it? Are they receptive and excited to continue, or they feel let down? And then the add-on question to that would be, what type of criteria was used to, quote-unquote, graduate out of the academy?
Do they like it? We haven't had one student or one parent request removal, and we're in the 6th week.
Perfect.
We also changed the format. They're in traditional 90-minute every other day classes, and they're no longer co-ed. There's a mix of both genders. So that was the major issue with the freshmen, especially the boys. And so that's not an issue any longer with our sophomores. The criteria that was set was based upon performance on STAR, credits earned the freshman year, and teacher recommendation. And those 3 criteria, when they cohered and gave the same indication, those were the students that we continued and recommended to the 10th grade academy.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Stallings?
Thank you. Dr. Herman, is there any outlook for the academy moving up into the 11th grade the next year, or is it like a 9th, 10th grade type of operation?
We'll wait and see. We'll look at the need, and we'll look at the data and see. We really don't want to build this as a fixture at Lamar. We hope it's something that is temporary, and that as we work on our vertical alignment, pre-K through 12, that we'll see systems in place, and that we won't have 150 students who have failed TAKS or STAR or are socially promoted. So this was an attempt to do something different and something that had been tried in other districts. And we hope that the cycle of interventions and support that we see and we've heard today from our elementary and junior highs will lessen the numbers of students that we have to provide for that sheltered environment in 9th grade. Right now, there's no plan for 11th grade, but of course, we'll use the same data, credits earned, STAR results, teacher recommendation. Those will be our criteria for consideration in the spring if we move forward and how we move forward with 11th grade.
Well, without a doubt, the Viking Academy has changed lives. I know at the beginning of the year last year, I had received a lot of calls, and some parents were very concerned. You know, my child's being put into this special sheltered classroom, legitimate concerns from parents. And by the end of the year, the same parents called me and said, I saw my students' test results, and I had them go back to school and check to make sure they were right, because they were so high. They're so high, you know. So what a tremendous turnaround that is. So it was kudos to you for that. So And also on the town hall meetings that are coming up on discipline. And what's the second topic?
It's our graduation plans, and especially anticipating December, January release from TEA, additional information about accountability. We want to have just-in-time information to our parents so that we can address some of those questions.
I appreciate that transparency and openness and reaching out to the community that has been very interested in hearing that and collaborating with the school. A lot of good buzz on that. So I appreciate that, and kudos to you on your plan and on and to all of the principals this evening. I have to share what Mr. Pompa and Dr. Reich, that it fills me also with great confidence, and I look forward to this school year. Thank you.
Dr. Cavasso, did you want to say something?
I do. Thank you, President Barron. I'd just like to make sure that we acknowledge the work of the teachers and the parents and the community. This really, you know, when we were here last year, this year and the effort that they placed last year was an effort to restore the trust of the public and the community of those schools, because the trust had been lost because of our performance. And so I want to, again, as the board has already acknowledged and thanked Jeff Province, Beverly McReynolds, the teachers at those schools and the principals that have been in those schools. Thank you for your work. These are truly drivers of improvement, and I think that's what has been demonstrated here. The other person I'd like to thank is Judy Linderman. I know Stephen acknowledged her, but Judy is also a driver and has been for many years a driver of improvement and success. And so Judy, I thank you for your help. I want to thank the curriculum staff also. Many hours of curriculum staff devotion and dedication to these campuses. I had the opportunity to sit in those PLCs with the staff and the teachers and the principals, and just the dedication is amazing. And so this is the fruit of that labor, and I just want to acknowledge that. And I want to finally, but not, of course, not least, is thank the board. Last year, the board made a very strong commitment, and Mr. Hibbs, back to your comment about resources. And you challenged the staff and made sure that we had the resources dedicated to these schools and other schools that were struggling, and that made a difference. And so with that, I just want to thank the staff for the work that they've done.
I have no further cards and no lights from the board. The public hearing on Lamar High School's improvement plan is now closed. Yes.
Thank you, President Barron. I'm a numbers guy, and I put some numbers here as we were talking about this, and I'd like to share those with you.
You know we have a paid numbers guy, right?
I know. Mine aren't quite as good as his.
Go ahead.
But just the total number of point improvements just from your school was 777 point improvement over last year. Just every school there. With an average of 155 point improvement per school. On the criteria, we improved on a total of, let me see, I had it at here. Count. Okay, here we go. Oh, I'm sorry. every one but two. So we had improvement in every single category but two, out of every single school, out of every single criteria that we had. So, I mean, once you start putting that into perspective, it's huge gains from last year to this year. I mean, from last year. So, again, congratulations on the efforts of everyone involved, and we really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, President Barron.
Great job. Next item is the open forum for agenda items, and I have no cards for the open forum for agenda items. Brings us to our action items. The first one is consider approval of the teacher appraisal pilot program. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. And last time at our work session, we had a presentation by Roger Jones for our teacher appraisal pilot program. And We had a thorough presentation, and Mr. Jones went over the pilot program and our reason for participating, and at this point, we bring it back for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Pena, a second by Mrs. Sullins to approve the teacher appraisal pilot program. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no lights, please vote. Oops, this one. 7 green lights, thank you very much. Some of us will be tapping this year, along with me. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consider approval of the strategic plan metrics. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. And at our last work session, we had Elaine Say present the strategic plan metrics, and we have a lot of discussion, but we also had a lot of revisions that were based on the discussion that the board had. So Elaine is here to provide an update on those revisions, and she's going to highlight those revisions for us, and then, of course, be open to any questions. So, Elaine?
Thank you, President and members of the board and Dr. Cavazos. I am pleased to be back to review again the proposed annual measures for the strategic plan. And after our session last time, we took your recommendations back and went through those. And basically, your recommendations revolved around adding some additional measures. And so we put those in the appropriate place. And what I'd like to do is just to go through those. Actually, I have all 28 measures in the report. And what I'd like to do is just to go through slide by slide just to highlight the actual measures that have had changes since you saw them last week. A few of the changes in the initial draft after your meeting were just minor wording changes, so I'm really going to only focus on where we've added or changed a measure in a different way. On the first one, on STAR and EOC, we were just there clarifying that the growth measure that we would use once TEA has developed one is the state measure, not a district developed measure. We didn't have any changes in the assessment of K2 reading and math or the norm referenced assessment at grade 2. In the rigorous courses measure, we did add the number of instructional hours, sort of an aggregate hours of rigorous courses taken each semester. So that's just an additional piece to that measure. In terms of participation and success in college admissions, we just want to clarify here that the intent on the scores that we will look at in for PSAT would be those that all 10th graders take. Measure 6 about high school completion. There's just the wording change minor about that it be the district credit requirements. Just clarification there. No change on the 4-year completion rate or the college ready standard on the EOC exams or the advanced or higher education plan, which is the advanced or distinguished program. Under Measure 10, the CT completion and 6-year plan, here we're clarifying that the students develop the plan in 8th grade. It goes through their first year of higher education. And then we will be looking by class cohorts, the students that have an updated plan. So the intent is not to just to develop the plan and walk away or, just put it away, but to check each year to see what % of the students have updated their plans. And we added the measure of technical certificates that are earned by students through the CT programs. Measure 11 dealt with perceptions of graduates and current graduating class in terms of their perceptions of their preparation and their then going on into higher education. And so we added the seniors prior to graduation survey, but we also added a survey of local employers so that they can give us feedback about the preparation of district graduates. Measure 12 looked at college enrollment and graduation rates, and we added here the piece of working with especially the local universities and colleges that a high proportion of our students attend, what of our graduates, or the proportion of our graduates that have to engage in remedial college coursework before they can get into the credit earning coursework. And we'd like to try to follow that by class cohorts, but that may or may not be possible depending on what kind of data that we can get from the university. Measure 13 had no changes on co- and extracurricular activities. Instructional practices, and remember this was a survey or an assessment we would conduct in the second year after the new instructional practices are in place, the new proposal for a new instructional model. Measure 15 looks at lifelong learners, community service, and leadership, and this is really just a minor wording change too. We had listed a series of attributes, but we changed the wording here to based on research-based attributes because we want to make sure we're on target when we measure these concepts. Student discipline, we added a comparison piece for when we look at students that are involved in serious offenses. We also want to compare the trends in our data to the trends that we would find in the citywide rates of criminal behavior. In facilities, just a couple of wording changes, but we added a facility usage metric by outside groups so we can kind of track to see what that looks like and kind of track that over time. Measure 18 is really just a wording change, but the concept there is exactly the same. Safe and secure, respectful schools, there was no change there. Staff retention rates, we included the measure of teacher experience as one of the factors we'd like to look at when we're looking at retention rates. So not only by the position type, but the years of experience within that position. A work culture and environment, there were no additions there. Internal customer service, just a clarification on the first point that it's perceptions of service provided by departments. And then we added examining the perceptions of vendors and applicants regarding the customer service that they receive. Customer service standards was not modified. Leadership training, just a couple of things there. In terms of looking at the effectiveness of the training, both immediately after the training and then a follow-up after that training before the end of the year, sort of look at that a little bit, 2 points in time. And then to look specifically at the number and types of persons that are trained and the hours of training involved. So more look at exactly what was provided in that time frame. And then, of course, the perceptions of those folks. Measure 25, we just really changed some wordings there, but effectiveness, we just made sure we had that word effectiveness in there. 26 looks at parent engagement and offerings for parents, and there were no changes in that measure. 27 looks at partnerships with the community and parent engagement opportunities, but here we added 2 measures. We want to look at the tutors and mentors, both adults and students, so because the focus on the instructional use of volunteers in the district. and then the report of funds that are donated to the schools in the district as a measure of the engagement of the community. And then last on 28, no change in that particular area.
Thank you, Elaine. Mr. Pompa.
Thank you, President Barron. Thanks, Elaine, for updating the report and taking into consideration a lot of the discussion that we had last time. Pretty much right in line with everything you have. I think the only one that I kind of was missing, and just you can tell me about your thoughts on this one, on the parent engagement, we had mentioned or recommended just reporting the number of volunteers, approved volunteers, and the number of hours that, because I know that wasn't going to be too hard of something to track because the schools already track it. And so, and then in terms just number of volunteers, they have to apply, so we have an easily accessible number. Was there a reason you didn't include it, or?
It could just been an oversight on my part. I may not have taken the best of notes at that part. Those would be, of course, quite straightforward and easy to add. Those also could be added in the some of the formative information you'll get in the quarter, or not quarterly, but the 4-month reporting. But it would be certainly easy to add that in here.
Okay. I just didn't know if maybe there was an issue with getting the information, or you thought maybe it was not as easily accessible as I thought it would be.
Right. The number of volunteers is easily accessible. The number of hours is not very reliable. The campuses recently reported those hours, but they don't have a system to track those hours. And so we would have to develop a system which I think would be valuable to do. But to report the number of hours, it's not reliable data because they don't track. There's no way to track them right now in terms of hours. They don't have logs or check-ins and stuff like that. That can certainly be an expectation, and if that's, I think that's of value to see the number of hours of volunteer.
Yeah, if the administration finds value in that, might be beneficial. I'm okay with at least tracking the number of volunteers and seeing if there's a trend up or down or flat. Hopefully what we see is as we're reaching out and basically facilitating that engagement, that we should see those numbers go up. I think the hours would be beneficial, but that may be just because it's my interest. But if you think there is value to it, then I'd certainly support that.
I think there's value in exploring a way to track that closer. I just want to make sure that when we do a baseline data that,
Jimmy's on it.
Yeah, but in terms of the number of hours,
the number of hours. Tell us about it, Mr. Walker? I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean
yeah, he's ready. He's got. Look at him.
Got a plan?
I was just thinking that with our new visitors management system, the Raptor, that we can track hours through that for volunteers. So that may be an avenue.
May use that system. I think that as we look at the hours and the check-in, that's another component of that.
It is.
All right.
Maybe we got a plan.
We got a plan. Like it. Thank you. That was the only thing thank you and great job. I feel like these are, at least on an annual basis, is going to give us a good indication of how we're trending. So I appreciate it.
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. I'll have to be a little bit of a contrarian there on documenting the number of hours. I myself am guilty, and I know many parents that we don't bother to turn in the hours. We don't care. We just go in, show up, do our thing. Sometimes it's not even getting into the door of the campus. It's doing something outside. So I don't know that will actually capture the true volunteer spirit that is occurring in our district, but I just want to put that out there. There was something I wanted to let you know and the rest of my colleagues know regarding to Measure 12. One of the concerns for us is to monitor our children that require remediation after graduation. That's a very difficult thing. Mr. Pompa and myself, we attended a session during the last State School Board Association meeting just this past weekend, and Dr. Cavazos is looking into this, but there's another school district that is working with a UNT statistician who through their legal process, have set up interlocals so that their student data is tracked to many of the state universities here in Texas. And they are trending that specifically down to the individual student, so that for us at a district, we could look at the individual student as well as put it into the cohort model. So I just want to put that out there. It's very preliminary, but it's looking really promising. But we'll wait to hear from Dr. Cavazos and what the research finds there. So I thought that was neat, and I asked that individual from UNT if there's other states, or if there's this data that he's able to track for students that are traveling outside of our state. And he said, not yet. That we are the only ones in the country doing this, so that it might be a great opportunity for us to be a part of and capture exactly what we're looking for our strategic plan to give us our direction. So I just wanted to put that out there. I did have one question on Measure 24 under the leadership training. I really like the ad of doing the survey immediately after 3 to 4 months post as well. Are we looking at any type of outcomes measures besides the surveying? Do we have any outcomes metrics that we're going to be put online to measure that, based on our assessment of our outcomes measures, those individuals are meeting marks? Or is that too soon, too preliminary, maybe another year down the road?
I think it may be another year down the road. We'd measure it against the curriculum of these leadership training sessions, and then measure the improvement that we'd want to see, or the effect that we want to see. Primary task is to put the curriculum together for the leadership training academies.
Excellent. I'm excited about it. I really appreciate everything that you included. I think you hit the mark. Really looking forward to the data coming through and showing what we're doing. Thank you very much.
Late arrival, Mrs. Sullins.
Just in time, Mr. Barron. So, thank you for the presentation this evening. The survey results that you're just talking about on the effectiveness of leadership training initiatives, are we having similar surveys for professional development, so we can have feedback from our teachers that attend professional development? Is that in here?
It's not included in here, but
Yeah, we do have feedback from our professional development sessions that our staff uses when they complete a session to review that.
Okay.
So that's part of the system.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you very much. That was an action item. We're voting. Without further comment,
I move to approve the metrics for our strategic plan.
Second it.
okay. Motion by Dr. Reich, second by Mr. Pompa. Any further comment? Please vote. Seven oh, the metrics are approved. Thank you, Elaine. Next item on the agenda is to consider the district improvement plan and the campus improvement plans. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. In our last work session, we had a presentation about our district and campus improvement plans. And just as a brief reminder that those plans will be aligned to our strategic plan, and they were developed, the ones you're voting on tonight were developed in the spring and the summer to meet compliance. And so we bring it back for approval.
So I have a technical question. Can we vote on all these at once, or are they individual items? This is the campus plan. Okay, I'll take a motion on the campus plan.
Move to approve.
I'm sorry, the district plan, right?
Second.
This is item, just item C, the district improvement plan and campus improvement plans. I'm working on it.
Move to approve the district improvement plan and campus improvement plan.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Sullins, second by Mrs. Pena for the district improvement plan and campus improvement plans. Please vote. 7-0, they are approved. Thank you very much. Now I'll take a motion to approve the campus improvement plans for Shackelford Junior High, Morton Elementary School, Roquemore Elementary School, Sam Houston High School, and Lamar High School all at once.
Move to approve campus improvement plan for Shackelford Junior High, Morton Elementary, Roquemore Elementary School, Sam Houston High School, and Lamar High School.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hogg, second by Mr. Hibbs to improve the school improvement plans for those campuses. If there's no further comment, please vote. All voting in the affirmative, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Next is a discussion action item to consider the approval to hold open forums. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, we'd like to present and ask the board to approve holding open forums for school boundaries for the Sherry Street Elementary that affect Atherton, Hale, and Johns Elementary, and Mr. Walker is here to give us a presentation on those boundaries.
President Barron, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos. Tonight, the Boundary Committee is here to ask the board for approval to conduct open forums in a public meeting. This will allow the committee to receive input and feedback from the citizens regarding the proposed boundary change for Atherton, Hale, Johns, and Sherry Street Elementary. Based on the recommendation received from the forums, the committee will meet to make adjustments and will present the proposal to the board as an action item on November the 1st board meeting. The Boundary Committee met on September 13th, and during that meeting, the committee selected a chairman who will be making the first part of the presentations, and I think the committee did an outstanding job in their selection. We have Ms. Stacy Bruce who will be making the first part of the presentation. We also have with us tonight who will be making the second part of the presentation, Mr. Rocky Gardner with Templeton Demographic. Mr. Bruce?
I'm kind of new at this. Hi, my name is Stacy Bruce, and I'm a parent at Atherton Elementary School. And this we saw before. This is what the new Sherry Street Elementary will look like. It's supposed to open August of 2013, and I can tell you we're very excited. Mr. Walker told you that our committee is composed of 4 citizens from each elementary, which is Atherton, Hale, and Johns. The principals are also on the committee, so that makes 15 total voting members. We have our committee, well, part of our committee with us. If you would please stand up. Atherton Elementary principal could not be here tonight, Miss Stephanie Hawthorne. But we have, hold on a second. I know Shane Nelson and Tammy Rogers. And if you could please introduce your parents.
All right, this is Miss Arguelles, one of our parents, and next to her is Miss Brown as well. These are her parents.
I had 2 of my parents here earlier, Todd Hackney and Aaron Wally, and they had to go home to take care of the little ones.
And as Mr. Walker mentioned, we first met on September 13th at Atherton Elementary. And during this meeting, we approved a plan that we believe will be beneficial to everyone involved. If our request for open forums is approved, the school will be sending out letters home on October 5th, notifying families of the dates of the open forums. These open forums will take place Tuesday, October 15th at Hale Elementary, Wednesday, October 16th at Johns Elementary, and Thursday, October 17th at Atherton Elementary. He has to tell me when to click because I have not done PowerPoint before. The committee will reconvene on October 27th to finalize boundary plans for presentation to the board. On Thursday, November 1st, the Boundary Committee will present recommendations to the board for approval as an action item. Friday, November 2nd, each school will send home a detailed letter to parents in the schools which are affected. Okay, these are some of the factors that we looked at when we were discussing the proposed boundaries. first and foremost were two things: our educational needs and our safety. Our schools are big. They're over, I think we're over 1,000, I know John's is. And we don't want to just give all the students to Hale and make funny boundaries. We want each school to have the opportunity for the best quality education that these students can possibly get. And I think that we've done this with this plan. Safety. We minimize the boundaries so slight, which Mr. Gardner will show you. And they're not going to be crossing many major streets. I know Mayfield is one, but that's being done now. And we have not really had any problems with that. We kept it to natural boundaries, which were the major streets, the subdivisions. Future growth, that's not my area, that's Mr. Gardner's. And ethnicity, we don't have a problem with that at all. It's very culturally diverse, and I love that. Neighborhood, school construction cost. Y'all went over that. I don't even know what that is. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to push buttons. I need you here. Wait. Okay, there we are. Gotta remember those buttons. I could just draw pictures. I feel like doing this. And today, thank you.
We're a team.
Huh?
We're a team.
We're a team. We are a team. Neighborhood identification. We wanted to make sure that the kids were going to go to their neighborhood schools. We didn't want somebody who lived behind Hale having to go all the way to Sherry Street. We like to keep the neighborhoods neighborhoods. Okay. The feeder system. That's not an issue because every single school that we're talking about tonight does feed into Hutchison Junior High and Sam Houston High School. And changes and boundaries should be kept to a minimum, of course, and you can see that we have done that. Transfers. This is something that I thought, well, we're going to have problems with this. But when we looked at the numbers, because the transfer students were already in our numbers, we decided that if the student going to either Atherton, Hale, or Johns that finishes up this school year can stay at that school if they choose to do so. And that includes siblings coming in. Okay. Oh, and there will be no more there will be no new transfers for the next school year. We've closed those just because we don't know the numbers yet. And maybe for the next year, that can be entertained, but right now, we just don't know exactly the numbers, so we want to get the numbers settled. Oh, and students who will be in the 6th grade during the 2013-14 school year will have the option to stay at Atherton Hill and Johns Elementary School. And this rule will also apply to their siblings. And that's all. Do you have any questions? I don't have the numbers, but Mr. Gardner will show you the numbers.
Thank you, Ms. Bruce. That was a very, very good job, by the way.
Good evening, President Barron, Board, Dr. Cavazos, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to go straight to numbers, and then we can talk about how we arrived and answer questions. I'm sure you guys will have a few. Again, this first slide's just kind of to remind you where we were when we started. You know, these three schools that we're talking about, Atherton, Hale, and Johns, you know, like two of the schools were well over capacity and have been well over capacity for several years. You can see the history there. They've been averaging over 1,000 students at Atherton and Johns for many years. And Hale has been right around 600 for several years, and so it's been under capacity. Remembering that Hale started as an academy and has since just, it doesn't necessarily have academy status at this point. So we do have just two boundaries we're working with because the Hale does not necessarily have a boundary to start out with. If we look at the current, what we call the reside enrollment, so these are the students that actually live within the attendance zone. That doesn't mean they actually attend the school within that attendance zone, but these are the number of students that live there. And so you can see that Atherton Hale, they have a total enrollment of about 1,945 students. Johns at 1,117. Then you're also going to see the building loads shown here, and these are where we've pulled out we took in 50% of the pre-K and pulled those out because the pre-K doesn't impact the schools, their total numbers divided in half because they're there for half days. And so you will see that load, and that load is very important when we begin to look at the capacities. This next slide here is the reside enrollment based on the new boundary plan. So here you're seeing the boundary plan, and you can, are my eyes blurry or is that a little blurry? I'm not sure. But you can see the boundaries there that are very natural. We use natural boundaries throughout the process. The only place where we drop below there is off of Mayfield. We do drop and pick up an apartment complex there that will be moving over to Atherton. It's about 88 students in that apartment complex. I think 81 of them are already attending Atherton. So it's not a big shift there. But that's the only place where it isn't natural. And I think the boundaries, they make really good sense. I don't think there wasn't really a lot of options. That, you know, there's only, without breaking up a neighborhood or splitting up boundaries or trying to use, you'd be doing some interesting gerrymandering in order to do anything significantly different. What you have here on this next slide is just the total numbers for the next 10 years that are estimated. Now this first slide is with no transfers, because the first thing we looked at was just the total enrollment numbers based on the residing students, if they attended the attendance boundary where they lived, and they were expected to attend that school. This is what the boundaries would look like, and you can see that all the elementary schools stay below capacity. The new elementary schools, right around, especially if you look at the loads, you know, that's the bottom set of numbers there. The loads they do approach 900 in about 5 to 7 years, but you can see 901 and 903, and those are we're splitting hairs at that point, at 4 years out. They do very good job. I think Hale approaches capacity as well on the back end, but keep in mind that these elementary schools are not in high growth areas, so they're going to see continuous regeneration. So we're going to see some spikes and some drops, and so what we believe is that we've got a very probably kind of smooth, kind of floating around in this area. This next one includes the current transfers. The way I worked the current transfers is we looked at the transfers in and out and developed kind of a net, either in or out transfer pattern. And if they were in the school this year, we rolled them through for their entirety at the school, to where by the 6th year, any transfers that are there now would actually have rolled out. And that's kind of what those numbers show there too. So you'll see your numbers. Actually, they change very little by keeping the transfers in there, and that's because the number of students in the area is very equivalent to the ins and outs are fairly even. And I think, yeah, I don't know if you guys have had some time to look at this prior to this meeting, so I'm sure. So with that, I'll take questions about methodology or stuff I can answer.
I think they're all stunned. Questions? Mr. Pompa.
Thank you, President Barron. Going back to the picture with the 3 different boundaries. So looking at Hale, and I can see it here, we still then have the issue of people that live across the street from Hale not being able to attend Hale?
Yes.
So that was there before, really nothing we could do with this opportunity
there
to
really isn't
redraw
anything we
the
could
lines to improve that at all?
No, I mean, we looked at options. There are a couple neighborhoods across the street there, and we looked at how they were kind of packaged together, where you can have, like directly across the street, I think there was an apartment complex that has about 43 students. Mm-hmm. And then adjacent to it, there was a neighborhood with 30. So we would have had to kind of move a chunk of those, but then we would have had to give up something. And if you look, I've got some numbers. If you look to the south of Hale, where there's a large neighborhoods there, those neighborhoods themselves have over 200 students in them, and so there wasn't anything that we could flip, you know, to allow us to move students in there because there has to be a trade-off without Hale becoming too large.
So the trade-off between those apartments there, kind of middle bottom, that is green.
Right.
That
like
wouldn't
twice as many students there.
So that would be really not a trade-off,
right?
Just to get the people right across the street in there. there'd be
Right,
two
so those people
mini
right
ones.
across the street, there was a chunk of those, actually about 77, and we thought, well, okay, this might be kind of an even swap, but it doesn't necessarily relieve Atherton at that point.
Dr. Cavazos, any other remedial steps that we could take to relieve some of the problem there, or is everybody pretty much used to it, they're okay with it, that's just the nature of it? And
I think they're used to it, and that's been something they've dealt with. I think when we look at the capacity of the buildings and our intent and the board's intent in terms of reducing the enrollment at the schools and leveling it out for a long period of time to provide relief of overcrowding, this was the best that the map and the numbers could really show, because of the number of students that live in that one complex.
I do believe that by keeping your transfer patterns, these first couple of years, the majority of the students that live across the street that maybe are attending Hale now are still gonna have that opportunity. And so then as that neighborhood transitions, at least they'll know when they come in, what school they're attending when they move here.
And in my overly simplistic mind, just looking at the pictures there, did you look at doing that line vertically rather than horizontally? So making Sherry Street so east, west, north, and south, so that you'd have one long strip going from Sunflower and to the right of Sherry all the way south being one, the population for Hale. Would that just be way too much moving?
It was considered, yeah. They actually, we discussed it for a few minutes, and it did look like there would just be too much movement, and it would stretch out a boundary, and we just couldn't get the numbers. Then it still came down to numbers and neighborhood components there.
Okay, all right, well, thank you, I appreciate your answers.
Dr. Reich?
Thank you, President Barron. Rocky, I just wanted to say thank you for putting the work into this, and great presentation as well by our parent. And to expand on what Mr. Pompa was just asking, I was seeing a lot of heads nodding as far as the committee. You guys actively discussed that parcel and the swap and the potential, and I mean, everybody's on board with this, everybody's okay. So I think that's great. I think that's part of our the success of our process with collaboration and having the community input to work through, along with your guided expertise as Templeton demographics, to see what we can do, how we can slice this pie up, so to speak. So I'm comfortable with it. It's unfortunate. It's kind of a quirky thing, but it is what it is. And I appreciate you trying to come up with different ways to slice this pie a little bit better, but I think it's the best that we have. So I really appreciate the time, and I think it's going to be good in the end.
Mrs. Collins?
Thank you. I had a couple of questions this evening. One is on this chart, so I'm glad it's still up. When I look at Johns Elementary and I see a total enrollment exceeding the enrollment capacity. When we go forward, we expect that to not be the case, or are we still going to be in temporary buildings?
Right. You see, that's a reside enrollment, and if you see that the total load of 668, it drops below capacity. And keep in mind, that's kind of what we use as a guide, because the administration reminded us, because the pre-K program was half a day. The number you want to focus on is more the total loads of the buildings as opposed to the total enrollment.
Do we have a projection? It may be for. Do we have a projection for how many students will be in temporary buildings upon completion of this, the building and the attendance zone?
I did not. We didn't look at any temporary building projections. I'm not sure. I'm assuming that with if we're below the building capacity, that they would all be within the building, but I'm not sure.
Do we think they'll be eliminated?
Ms. Powell, I think, has some information on that.
That's what, yeah. It's because, does the building load count temporary building space?
No.
Okay.
It does not. And I have very general information. As we've looked at the entire East Arlington area, we've looked at enrollments, we've looked at building loads, and that's for the primary structure, the brick and mortar structure, if you will. What our long-range projections have indicated is that the combined capacity of all the new space that we're adding, that we plan to add, will eliminate all regular classes out of temporary buildings. And what we've indicated is there may still be some places here and there where a campus chooses to use a pull-out program or put a pull-out program of some type in a temporary building, or maybe we even have some administrative type offices like at Knox where we have some programs that are in temporary buildings. But we should, in total, be removing all of the regular classrooms out of temporary buildings.
So it'll be some special pullouts, but so we'll still be
It's
reliant on temporary classrooms.
Right. I hesitate to say that we'll get rid of every single temporary building. A school may
I'd love
want
to hear that.
Yeah, we all would. But yeah, whether it's a sixth grade band or a speech pullout or a Title I family rep that is working out of a temporary building, I think you may still see some of that. But what our projections are showing us is that we will be able to eliminate regular classes out of the temporary building. So kids won't be out there all day long for their entire instructional career.
Yeah. And that may be a bigger discussion for another evening, but would the Johns footprint allow for an addition onto Johns to get all students inside?
I think that is something we'd have to study. I think Mr. Carlisle can speak to that better than I can. I think there is that's something that we should look at and bring back.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Pell. I have another question about this, the boundary planning areas with the total elementary students that has, there's sections on the map that I'm looking at. That's the map, but there's a section 89 that has students crossing Mayfield. And I mean, if I'm just looking at this, and I know the committee did a tremendous amount of work and looked at it with a lot of different parameters, but if I'm just glancing at this map, it looks like that's a long way for students to go over to Atherton. Could you help clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a move, it was an apartment complex, and it was a move that we made to continue to balance the attendance boundaries. When we looked at that, I mean, that group, there's 89 students there. 81 of them are already attending Atherton, so they're already making that move. So we, when we're looking at opportunities to balance, we talked about before, we're looking for pockets of neighborhoods. If we were to leave that neighborhood in Hale would be way too large, and so then we have to look for something to relieve Hale with, and there just wasn't.
It also looks a lot further on the map.
I'm sorry, I couldn't. Yeah.
Because I can see the school from my house, and when we have to go drive down Mayfield, it looks like, oh, they're crossing Mayfield and they have to trudge all the way over here, but actually Hale is a lot further as far as walking down the side of a busy intersection. We have 2 crossing guards at Mayfield to help them cross. And because the school zone is quite long, the cars do go slow. I never see anyone actually zooming through it, and we do have the APD there a lot, checking to make sure that the school zones are being the right speed limit. I just wanted to let you know,
No,
because
I appreciate it. That's very helpful.
Well, it really looks a lot further than it is, and it's not.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
And something I wanted to mention as well, when we first met, when the boundary committee met, we showed 2 options. And the first option was having that apartment complex going to Hale, but it made them substantially overcrowded when we looked at a period of 10-year projection. So that's why the committee voted to leave the apartment complex at Atherton, because 81 of those students are still going to Atherton anyways. And so, but the main thing we looked at is trying to get the numbers down and trying to not have one school overcrowded and the others, not. So that's our main objective, to try to balance all 3 schools. And this was the best plan that we came up with.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Pena.
One of the things that Mr. Pompa brought up about the apartments across the street from Hale, one of the things the board can do is, it's already been revealed to us that some of the students there are already asking for transfers to Hale. We can give administration direction to give them priority when they request the transfer to Hale. And that will resolve any kind of concerns that we may have and allow them to do that, just that.
Didn't the committee recommend that there be no further transfers for next year? Keep the transfers that are in place, but don't approve any more?
Yes, unless there are siblings coming in. I'm sorry. And I can't see, I also have to look on the little monitor. The students that are already in place can stay at those schools. And if, say, they have a sibling that is coming into pre-K or kindergarten, they also have the choice to go to the school where the sibling is. Does that make sense?
That recommendation is only for next year. I'm talking about in the future.
Yeah, I understand. Dr. Pazos.
Well, in terms of that specific apartment complex, if we allow transfers in the future, then that affects the capacity then of Hale. I don't know if that's what we're talking about in terms of allowing some of those transfers to go to Hale.
From what I understand, there are already a number of students transferred in. They will be staying there.
That's correct.
What I'm saying is for that area in particular, that's in an area where people come and they go.
Okay.
But since it seems to be an interest in that area in particular, in the future, we can grant that. So that area that seems to have the interest in going to Hale is allowed to do so.
And I think that the students there are going to Atherton right now.
I think we're getting confused.
Okay.
What I brought up was the houses directly across, so directly north of Hale, across Mayfield.
That's what I'm talking
They live
about.
there, and not the apartments, because Ms. Sullins was talking about the apartment complex. I was talking about just looking at the houses or the neighborhood directly across from Hale, and it just strikes me as kind of odd that there's a school directly across the street from you, but you got to go to the school that's, a lot further away.
And you already
so-
said that there were students that already transferred into Hale now. So they would still be able to do that. It's just that, and if we want to freeze for next year, that's fine, but the board can give direction for in the future that general area be given priority when requesting transfers.
They're right around there.
I mean, it's certainly a.
That's not 89.
If
that's
there's
just-
capacity.
yeah.
And
But we don't allow transfers if there's no capacity.
that's right, that it would be based on capacity, but you clarified that we wouldn't allow it if there wasn't capacity. Okay, we can do that.
Mr. Pompa.
Thank you, President Barron. Just a question on the committee, were all these proposals unanimously approved or consensus, mostly everybody?
They were unanimously.
They were all unanimously approved? Okay.
Because we didn't want to break up the neighborhood. You're talking about the neighborhood directly across from Hale. But the way the neighborhood is set up, it is actually part of the Atherton neighborhood. I mean, we just had National Night Out for our neighborhood, and that's Nottingham, and it included all of that, and we had so many people. And I think they like that neighborhood camaraderie that we have there.
Yeah, I just want to know that there isn't a few
No.
parents that were like, hey, we didn't like that, and they're going to start calling and emailing us soon after this.
The only problem was the whole transfer thing, because you have people that are loyal to their school, that their children are already going there. And so now that, once that's out there, that takes away a lot of that.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And I need to point out that we're not voting on the boundaries tonight. We're just voting to allow for public comment.
And I'd
Okay?
like to talk about that.
And we'll get it if it's appropriate. Mr. Hibbs, you're on.
Do we need to make a motion to approve this? To
Not
vote on
yet,
this?
not yet.
Yeah, we can talk this to death, folks.
I want to talk about the dates. That's what we're going to vote on, are the dates. I would like to talk about the dates now, not the boundaries.
But you want to talk about the dates?
Yes, I wanted to point out on the October 16th, there is a big event at Sam Houston High School that night in which Dr. Cavazos, Mr. Pompa, and I were going to be given the Sam Houston Texan Award. So you don't need a quorum, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. Also, on October 18th, we already have a board meeting scheduled. So I just want to make sure everybody knew
These are
that.
public forums out in the neighborhoods.
But we have to have that open forums. If we're all there, it has to be a called meeting, unless we already have a meeting scheduled.
No, we're not going to be there.
Okay.
This is for the public to meet and tell us what they think. I'm not
Yes,
going to be there.
and I'll probably have to be there, but
I just want.
we will, the forum, open forum will be conducted by our committee, and I'll be there as a liaison.
All right, good.
And then we'll bring it back November 1st.
All right. I just want to make sure, because I knew things are on the calendar for those, 2 of those 3 dates.
Yeah, we're shooting for local control here. And I want to stay out of it.
Well, this one is once they get to the actual boundaries, it'll get hot.
Well, eventually we'll vote on it.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, John.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the committee's report on holding the open forums on school boundaries for the Cherry Street Elementary, Atherton, Hale, and Johns Elementaries.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hibbs, second by Mrs. Sullins to accept the committee approval for the public forums and all that stuff. Please vote. Okay, it's 7-0, everybody approved. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bruce and the committee. We really appreciate it. And I especially thank the folks in the neighborhood who have participated. I know it means a lot to you because these are your kids. All right. Thank you. That brings up the consent agenda and items to be removed from the consent. Before we get into that, I'm going to pull the item 13-8, the RFQ for curriculum and assessment audit. I anticipate that'll require a great deal of discussion from the board, and we will move that to our work session coming up on the 18th. And that will have, that will take it, 13-18. Okay? That's the RFQ for curriculum and assessment audit, and we'll have plenty of time on the 18th to discuss that. Are there any other items to be withdrawn from the consent?
President Barron, I would ask that 13-19 also be pulled from the consent and be voted on separately.
Thank you. We'll pull 13-19 from consent and vote on that separately. Any other items?
I'd like to have item L pulled and voted on separately.
Item L, Lima, will be pulled and considered separately. Ms. Powell.
President Barron, board members, Dr. Cavazos, it's my pleasure this evening to report that our schools have received donations from the following individuals and organizations: BioRidge Pharma, Arlington High School Volleyball Booster Club, the Arlington High School Football Booster Club, Arlington High School Choir Booster Club, Mary Pettigrew, the Arlington High School Speech and Debate Booster Club, the Arlington Kiwanis Foundation, Robert Greenberg, the Bowie High School Band Booster Club, the Bowie High School Baseball Booster Club, Moline Construction Management, Lamar High School Volleyball Booster Club, Lamar High School Tennis Booster Club, Lamar High School Cheerleaders Booster Club, Lamar High School Baseball Booster Club, the Arlington ISD Gymnastics Booster Club, Jan Thurman, anonymous donor, the Martin High School Sundancers Booster Club, the Martin High School Volleyball Booster Club, the Martin High School Band Booster Club, Dr. Brian Britton, the Martin High School Golf Booster Club, Martin High School Girls Soccer Booster Club, Affiliated Bank, Martin High School Baseball Booster Club, Martin High School Football Booster Club, Talent Roofing, Martin High School Choir Booster Club, Target Take Charge of Education, Sam Houston High School Band Booster Club, Kenny and Lisa Trout, the Greater Arlington Lions Club, First Methodist Church Adult, Safeway, Barnett Junior High School Athletic Booster Club, Bowles Junior High School Choir Booster Club, the Bowles Junior High School Orchestra Booster Club, various businesses and individuals for the Gunn Junior High School 40th Anniversary Celebration, the Owsley Junior High School PTA, Church of the Good Shepherd United Methodist, Al Clark Insurance and Financial Services, Duff Elementary School PTA, Yen Vo, Moore Elementary School PTA, and Amigos in Azul de Arlington. Our total donations this evening are $147,741, which brings our year-to-date total to $356,901.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. And thank you to our very generous community. It's almost exactly what it was last year at the same time.
Yes.
Kind of strange. That'll bring us to, we vote on the consent first.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Reich, second by Mrs. Sullins to approve the consent. Yes, ma'am. We already pulled those. Yes. We pulled them. They are pulled. Please vote. Consent passes minus items 13-18, 13-19, and Lima. Thank you. Okay, the first item pulled is 13-18, and we're going to consider that next time. So after that, 13-19, Mr. Hibbs.
Board members, fellow trustees, I'm going to abstain from voting on this one. There's over 60 items on this that talks about instructional materials, supplies, and service providers. And one of the service providers is Camp Thurman. I think you're all aware, and this is on record and filed with the state. My wife works at Camp Thurman, as do my two children, as counselors. So just to have an overabundance of caution, I'm not going to vote on this particular item.
Thank you. Can I have a motion on 13-19?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hogg, second by Dr. Reich on 13-19. Is there any comment on that? Please vote. Six in the affirmative, and Mr. Hibbs has abstained. Thank you. Next item withdrawn was item Lima. Mrs. Pena.
Yes, I just had some questions for Mrs. Powell. I zoomed in on this piece of property with my map, and I had initially had this piece of property confused with one that was further in town. This one is close to 360.
It is east of 360, right?
And my question was, when we did the consideration for the division of the taxes that we'll recover should this pass, you gave us the percentages of what all the taxing entities would receive. Is there any consideration ever made to the fact that the AISD has to maintain the property, and do they get anything to make up for those funds?
No, historically, we have maintained it not on a weekly basis by any stretch of the imagination, regularly as needed. But since the property is struck off to us, we have not ever tried to recoup cost of that nature when we sell a struck off property. We're usually seeking to get that property back on the tax roll, and so the sales proceeds have always been liquidated entirely across all of the taxing entities in the proportion of the taxes that were owed that entity.
So the quicker we get it off the records, the better.
The quicker we can get it back on the tax rolls, and this particular one was struck off the tax rolls in October of 2001, so we've had it off of the tax rolls for 11 years now.
And we did have a bid made on it before, haven't we? But it was significantly lower.
It was, yes, last year.
I just wanted that clarification.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I'll make a motion to approve item L.
And I'll second it. Thank you. Motion by Mrs. Pena, second by Mr. Barron to approve item L. Please vote. You want to talk? 7-0 in the affirmative. The motion passes. We have no discussion items. That brings us to our open forum for non-agenda items, and we have one card. Finally,
It's before 10.
this second open forum segment of the meeting provides citizens with an opportunity to address the trustees on any subject except personnel. This is not intended to be a discussion or a debate, and trustees will not reply to the speakers. Derogatory comments aimed at an individual will not be tolerated. I have one card from our audience when your name is called. Please step to the podium. You will have 5 minutes to speak. A lighted timer on the podium will assist you in pacing your presentation. A yellow light will illuminate when there is 1 minute left for you to complete your presentation. When the red light comes on and the buzzer sounds, please end your presentation. Our speaker tonight is Eva Rogowski. Subject is thank you to the counselors, or from the counselors, perhaps. Good evening.
Good evening. Dr. Cavazos, President Barron, and board members. My name is Eva Rogowski, and I'm the elementary lead counselor for the Sam Houston Network. And on behalf of all the elementary counselors, thank you for listening to us and for providing for our concerns concerning testing and special ed counselors. We recognize that you have a set budget that you have to work with, and we sincerely appreciate you allocating funding for our concerns. With the hiring of testing facilitators and guidance techs and providing additional counselors' help, we are now able to spend more time with the children in classroom, in small groups, and in individual counseling. As you know, our goal is to follow the TEA guidelines provided in the Comprehensive School Guidance and Counseling Developmental Manual by providing for the social, emotional needs of children and to provide the crisis prevention necessary so that ultimately students can progress academically. As counselors, we really miss the time working with all children. But the counselors who have the testing facilitators are especially exuberant to be given the quality time needed to address the huge range of issues that vary from teaching anti-bullying strategies to working with children in grief situations. So please, we have some thank you cards that we would like to give to you, and we ask you to please accept this small token with heartfelt gratitude. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Rogowski. That brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. I have some important news to share with you and the community. Last week, we had the opportunity to participate with NBC5 as they highlighted the professional learning communities at Shackelford Junior High, and the teachers were interviewed, and initially they were nervous, but then they got real used to that camera and spoke frankly about our PLCs.
Oh, no. Oh,
no. On Tuesday night was National Night Out, and board member Gloria Pena and I joined the Arlington Police Department to visit neighborhood parties throughout Arlington, and it was a good opportunity for us to reinforce engaging the community in different neighborhood associations and our partnership with the police department. Tuesday night was also the Dean Corey Band Spectacular that several board members attended and will report on in a little bit, I'm sure. The annual event is a great evening to showcase our high school bands They also received critiques at that evening from judges as they prepare for UIL marching contest. Junior high bands have a special opportunity to perform between the high school performances, so that's always a special evening. Yesterday was Walk to School Day, and I took part in the celebration with Corey Elementary and walking from the Cliff Nelson Recreation Center to the school. Another walk. It was, but the weather was much nicer. It was very, very nice. It was a wonderful morning, and I enjoyed speaking with the kids and the parents that joined us that evening. And the principal, Mr. Howell, did a great job at making sure the kids were safe walking to school. The Arlington Public Library recently announced a national leadership grant from the Institute for Museums and Libraries. We have partnered with the library in this grant effort, which will serve early education providers and ultimately the children and the parents of our school district. The Texas Association of School Psychologists has recognized our special ed school psychology service area and staff for outstanding delivery of school psychology services. They will receive an award tomorrow at a conference in Houston. School districts were nominated in several areas, including model of service delivery, programs, direct and indirect services, to recognize the implementation of best practices and innovative practices. Next Wednesday is Texas Education HR, or Human Resource Day, and I want to thank our personnel staff for the work that they do throughout the year. Their dedication and commitment to the students of Arlington really makes a difference with our Human Resources Department, so I want to thank them for their work. This time I'd like to show a brief video from Reminzi Elementary, and all of the students at Reminzi are learning how to create presentations, and they'll actually be presenting at a special program next Tuesday. And so they wanted to drum up support for their presentations, and so they created this video, and so we want to show it now, and Spence, take it. These are students to drum up support, and who would want to miss that? I mean, that was a great presentation. Matt Brown, Principal, thank you for your efforts in this, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Are there board members with board member reports? Mr. Hibbs.
Very quickly, during the time that we held our meeting tonight, there was a high school football game played. Bowie beat Pascal 63-3. It was at the end of the first quarter, it was 35-0. The coach showed great restraint because at halftime it was 49-0. And at the end of the third quarter, 56-0, 63-3. So he did back off quite a bit. So we appreciate Coach Kenny Perry, what he's doing with that football team over there, and we congratulate Bowie High School. This last week, I was able to participate with the Education Foundation and go out and present grants. I was able to go to Bergen, Sam Houston. I know that Ditto, Farrell, and several other campuses across Arlington received grants from the Education Foundation. Folks, this foundation itself is doing great things for the schools and presenting opportunities for teachers to get very creative in the classroom. So I want to thank everybody that participates with the Education Foundation, that serves on their board and directors, and obviously those people that donate to that organization. They've done great things. We've got one great philanthropist here in Arlington, Dan Dipert, who's committed to match funds for 10 years that has done great things for that, so I appreciate that. And then on Saturday, I was able to attend New World Methodist Church. They had a fall festival, and I want to thank New World Methodist Church because all the proceeds from their fall festival went to the Arlington Lamar PEPS program, and they had a auction, and just on the auction alone of baseballs that they had in this, they raised over $300. The total event is going to be several $1,000s, and for that church, as an outreach from their church to give all those proceeds to the Lamar PEPS program is just amazing. And that's the community involvement that we hope for through our strategic plan, and we just really want to be thankful for their generosity. If anybody's members there, please be sure to thank them for their support to this program.
Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Barron. Start off, we'll go with our formal piece first. Today, the audit committee met, myself, Mr. Hibbs, and Ms. Solons. We met with Mr. Edwards, our internal auditor, and started the discussion with our external auditor. It's that time of the year again, and we're going through an external audit. So they've started our process. They are on campus as we speak, working. We have a couple of them here now, a couple more coming in next week. We should be completing, around the 1st of November. November 1st meeting, we should be receiving all the external audits to review that. So everything's looking good in the process right now, but they are starting the sample size, and we had lots of discussion about mitigating risk, which is always critical to a district. And then today, on a fun side, not that audit's not fun, Mr. Edwards. No, please, no offense that audit's not fun, because man, it can be. It's amazing. So
You're getting in it now. Just quit.
Today, Mr. Harvey and I had the honor of introducing and having our first meeting of the Student Leader Advisory Board, something we as a group voted on previously, something we're taking a new stance on of getting students more actively involved. And one of our part of our strategic plan is creating student leaders. And these are the junior class presidents. And let me tell you, the students that came in today, junior class presidents, I asked them the first thing, I said, do you guys know what you're here for, or do you just know your principal told you to be here? And they said, well, we know our principal told us to be here. I said, I can take that. And we started the discussion of going through the committee, and the way they started to realize how great it was and how they had active involvement, not just for their school that they're representing, but their entire network. We then had the nice distinct honor to hear from Dr. Cavazos, and then introduce all these wonderful, outstanding students to the entire principals meeting, so that every principal knew what we were doing with these students and the student-driven committee to really go for that. We did go through and have the students truly draw ping pong balls, and so each student has been assigned to one board member to help them, and we'll be holding things such as town hall meetings with those students to really solicit community feedback from the stakeholders. So I thank Mr. Harvey for all his work. I thank Rebecca Leopard, our president, and all the students. And so you will see those students at our next meeting, our work session. We will be discussing with them the bring your own device policy to solicit student feedback on how we should evolve that. So I thank everyone for the work on that. I thank this board for taking an aggressive stance and saying, let's do something like this. It's something new, and I think it's going to something that will turn out very nice for us in the long run. Thank you, guys.
Mrs. Pena.
As Dr. Cavazos shared with you all, I had the opportunity to go to the National Night Out with him and the acting chief of police and other community leaders. And we also, this is really sharing with the board, one of the stops we made happened to be in the Mansfield ISD area. And we had some the citizens ask us why they couldn't come to our schools, and we shared with them that we just changed that. And one of the ideas that was presented actually by the acting chief of police was for us to share it with the Board of Realtors so that the families outside but within the city boundaries are aware that this opportunity is now available to them. But they got real excited because they said they are so close. The group we were at was, would be in our Morton cluster. And they were excited at the opportunity because they said they're tired of driving by Arlington schools to have to go to Mansfield schools. So that was one of the real exciting highlights, apart from the fact that it was wonderful company and very welcoming. Our community was very welcoming and appreciative that we took the time to stop and visit with them. The other thing I wanted to share is really with the community. Our nominations for the naming of the Sherry Street Elementary School is still open. It will be open for another week. At this time, we have approximately 1,600 nominations that have been made, but we want the opportunity to be given to everyone so that they can send in as many more as they want. But please, only submit one nomination, and not the same one 10 times. It just makes for a lot of work to have to cull those out. But we do want you to submit what you have and nominate whoever you believe is worthy of the naming of the school district, because it'll be a great honor to whoever receives that. Thank you.
Not that there's anything wrong with Mansfield schools, okay? So, Mr. Papa.
Thank you, President Barrett. Now, Ms. Pena, so the 100 times that I enter your name, you're saying that shouldn't do that for the elementary?
Not even for me.
Okay. We've been pretty active the last few weeks. The highlight for sure was the Dean Corey event that we attended. Was that Tuesday night? Tuesday night. You know, we do have the recognition for being a great district for the fine arts. And let me tell you, that was evident on Tuesday night. The performance by all the bands all the way across the districts was impressive. From the junior highs to the high schools, and Miss Hullins was with me, and I made just a little funny remark that our high school bands sound better than some university bands. We experienced that, so that was very interesting to see. Also attended, as I've shared here before, I'm very interested in the President's Deferred Action Order, and Mr. Benavides invited me to participate with his community outreach program, where he took the leadership to educate students in his population about the opportunity that is in front of them. He had over 600 individuals participate in this program, and the unintended positive consequences is that so many people that had never come to the school before came to the school for the first time, and they've stated that won't be the last time they're coming to the school. So they felt that there was a sense of openness and welcoming, and I heard this several times throughout the night, that people felt welcome that night by the staff, by the school, by myself, the board, the superintendent was there, and so that's a great thing. We can bring 600 people that most of them would have never been to the school to come in and feel comfortable coming back and get actively engaged in the school. That's, you know, even beyond what I was expecting, so that was great to see. And then we attended, most of us attended the Texas Association of School Administrators and Texas Association of School Board conference in Austin this weekend, and learned a lot, great seminars, some good stuff, some of that Dr. Rice shared earlier. But the one thing that was really cool to hear was people stopping us on the floor of the convention and saying, "Hey, what's going on in Arlington? We're hearing a lot about Arlington. We're reading about Arlington in the paper. We're hearing about them in the news. It sounds like you guys are doing some really good things." And not just, obviously not just our board, but our schools, our superintendent, everyone is, people are starting to kind of get that sense that, hey, we're doing something. And that was really great to hear, because that was one of our goals, is to be globally recognized as an exemplary school district. And to hear just the beginnings of that was very reassuring, on top of the great work that was presented here by our principals tonight. So very happy to report that. Thank you.
Dean Corey was great. I love going to see the band. When my daughter Kate was in the band at Arlington High, we would go and stay until halftime when the band finished, and then we'd go home. And I'd say, Kate, what was the? I know, Bowie. And then we'd say, ask her who won the game, and she'd go, I don't know. I mean, you were there. Well, but she was in the band, and they don't really watch the game apparently. So. And then the next day, I had my first TAP evaluation. So in my school, we have 4 a year. So if you think PDOS is bad, 4 times a year. Anyway, the schools that we're evaluating the TAP rubric in will do 2 a year, 2 full evaluations for their teachers, and then the state is going to plan on rolling out something in 2014 to do away with PDOS. And that's it for us. Mr. Secretary, you got anything for the record?
No.
Mr. Secretary's follow-up, you got anything for the record? In that case, we are not going into closed session. We are done for the night. Thank you very much.